Chapter 424. Qin Wentian slowly ascended, his steps firm and resolute. His gaze was fixed on the staircase, nobody could obstruct him. Die! Another voice rang out from Qin Wentian's mouth. Instantly, the sound of sword whistling filled the air as the vines and trees around Luo He were slashed apart. At the same time, all the vines and trees were slashed apart. The sword light swept past, resembling a beam of light. Bzzz. A terrifying sword light flashed past, directly in front of Luo He. Abruptly, a towering gigantic sword manifested, exuding a sword might that could annihilate everything. Only to see a silhouette walking over, standing beside Luo He as he stared at Qin Wentian below. Everyone, this sword is too demonic. After we kill this brat, this sword will no longer pose any threat to us. That person spoke. Instantly, the experts around Qin Wentian released their astral novas, causing the pressure in this space to make it hard for the spectators to breathe. Qin Wentian acted as though he didn't see anything. His blood unceasingly dripped onto the surface of the demon's sword as he continued ascending the staircase. My will, is the will of my sword. Qin Wentian's voice rang out. His calm voice melded together with the sound of the sword whistling, becoming one with the other. His voice was the sound of the sword whistling. His will was the will of his sword. At this moment, Qin Wentian only felt that his connection with the demon's sword had deepened. An expert from the great Solar Chen clan slowly walked towards Qin Wentian. With a grab of his palm, a terrifying inferno manifested in the air, condensing into a terrifying hell flame demon, directly manifesting in front of Qin Wentian, blasting towards Qin Wentian. The body of this hell flame demon was incomparably gigantic, and with a single palm strike, it seemed as though it could shatter everything. Qin Wentian acted as though he didn't see it, he continued ascending the staircase. Boom! His foot landed on another flight of stairs. At the instant his foot landed, the boundless sword qi transformed into a gigantic sword that pierced through the hellfire demon. Flames danced in all directions, but were instantly reduced to dust by the sword qi. This scene caused everyone to exclaim in their hearts. How strong was the sword will near Qin Wentian? Brother Wang. Only to see that expert from the Chen clan turning his gaze onto an expert from the Wang clan of the War Continent. That expert from the Wang clan stepped out as he retrieved an item with 10 million strands of silk in his hand. With a wave of his hand, the 10 million strands of silk shot towards Qin Wentian, transforming into an inescapable net that shot towards Qin Wentian. The incomparably terrifying sword qi slashed at it, but it was unable to cut it apart. It was obvious that this was a powerful divine weapon. Qin Wentian inclined his head, but he didn't look at the inescapable net. Instead, he stared at that expert from the Wang clan. His eyes seemed to originate from the coldness of eternity, capable of freezing the souls of those who stared at him. That expert from the Wang clan only heard the shrill cry of a great rock. His countenance turned incredibly unsightly as he retreated with explosive speed. He only saw a gigantic rock that blotted out the sun zooming past him, its wings wanting to lacerate his throat. Bang! The silhouette of the great rock vanished from sight. However, the shrill cry of the sword didn't cease. The heart of that expert from the Wang clan shuddered as another wave of coldness pierced through his throat. His silhouette flickered with extreme speed, as fast as a beam of light. Everything happened in an instant. When that expert from the Wang clan coughed up blood, the crowd still didn't dare to believe their eyes. What they saw was real. But that falling body of his, as well as that divine weapon that fell from the sky, had no intention of confirming his death. The shrill cry of the sword, the silhouette of the great rock. This is the melody of the sword, the will of the martial Tao. Qin Wentian borrowed the power of the demon's sword. His intent was the sword intent of the sword. The eyes of the crowd narrowed as their hearts trembled. This young man was too terrifying. Although Qin Wentian wasn't able to control the demon's sword, the might he could unleash by dragging it along with him was already sufficient to cause others to feel awe in their hearts. Before this, no one in Grand Xia had expected that the immovable demon's sword at the bottom of the precipice in the sword-reverend city would be so terrifying. They simply didn't dare to imagine. If there was someone who could truly control the demon's sword, how terrifying would that person be? It would be sufficient to sweep across the entire Grand Xia. However, it was rumored that this demon's sword was unmovable throughout the ages, and no one had ever managed to pull it out. Most probably, some of the peak characters of Grand Xia had also tried, but the fact that the sword hadn't left the precipice indicated that no one had succeeded. Hence, how difficult would it be to completely control it? However, what the crowd didn't expect was that the top ranker of the heavenly fate rankings, Qin Wentian, had seized ancient luck and inherited the mandate of heaven. It was as though the mandate of heaven had returned, and he had successfully pulled out the demon's sword. And now, a single person wielding a single sword, flaunting his might in front of the Pill Emperor Hall. Qin Wentian finally stepped onto the 99th step. When he stepped out, the entire Pill Emperor Hall shuddered. His demon's sword was still dragging along the steps as he turned his gaze onto those from the Wang clan who hadn't left yet. You all treat my life like grass, killing me whenever you want. In that case, I'll treat all of you like ants. So what if I'm the enemy of the entire Grand Xia? As the sound of Qin Wentian's voice faded, a cold light flashed as the sword whistled through the air. In the direction of those from the Wang clan, a raging wind gusted by as the silhouette of a great rock blotted out the sun. Everywhere it passed by, blood rained down like rain. In an instant, it was unknown how many experts had fallen. Just like what Qin Wentian had said, these transcendent powers had never placed him, the top ranker of the heavenly fate rankings, in their eyes. A fallen genius wasn't a genius at all. In their eyes, Qin Wentian would die without a doubt. Hence, they treated Qin Wentian's life as nothing but grass. They were only thinking about how to divide the secrets on Qin Wentian's body. Since this was the case, what else could they say? They could only kill him. Boom! Qin Wentian stepped out once more, dragging the demon's sword up as the humming sounds of the sword echoed unceasingly. Luo He's heart trembled, this sword was actually so powerful. Die! Qin Wentian howled in rage. The sound of a dragon's roar echoed out as the silhouette of a terrifying dragon lunged towards Luo He, wanting to devour her. Luo He's countenance stiffened as an ancient tree wrapped around her body. A thunderous rumbling sound echoed out as Luo He was flung through the air along with the ancient tree, slamming heavily into a stone wall. Qin Wentian didn't even bother to glance at her, he continued walking towards Mo Qingcheng. Those who obstruct me, die. Qin Wentian's gaze was incomparably cold. As the sound of his voice faded, those beside Mo Qingcheng all collapsed to the ground. Only Mo Qingcheng remained standing there unscathed, staring at Qin Wentian in a daze. I will definitely bring you away. Qin Wentian's voice was filled with an incomparable resolve. Mo Qingcheng shook her head. Her body was enveloped by a powerful force, as a stifling pressure bore down on her, causing her robes to flutter wildly in the wind. You won't be able to bring her away. In the towering great hall, a figure stared in their direction. His eyes were incomparably terrifying, capable of penetrating through space. As the sound of his voice faded, Mo Qingcheng's body rapidly retreated. Qin Wentian could only watch helplessly as Mo Qingcheng's body was sucked away. The moment he broke free from the demon's sword, not only would he not be able to save Mo Qingcheng, he would also die for sure. Staring at Mo Qingcheng stretching out her hands, her eyes filled with unwillingness to part with him, Qin Wentian's heart was filled with an endless amount of pain. Just like that, Mo Qingcheng was dragged further and further away, gradually disappearing from his vision. Qin Wentian's gaze was ice cold. His perception followed Mo Qingcheng's direction, and even when they reached the end of the Pill Emperor Hall, his perception was still there. It was as though a gate to a forbidden ground had been opened, and Mo Qingcheng was sucked into it. Beyond the gate to the forbidden ground, the air was misty and misty. However, Qin Wentian could sense an incomparably evil energy within. Take good care of yourself. Mo Qingcheng closed her eyes. Her beautiful countenance was wet with tears. It was as though she was speaking to thin air. She hoped that no matter what happened to her, he would be safe and sound. Bzzz. Mo Qingqing's body fell into the depths of the abyss. Qin Wentian's perception was also about to follow her into the abyss. An even greater evil energy permeated the air, causing Qin Wentian's heart to tremble violently. Boom! A thunderous sound rang out as the forbidden gate closed, directly isolating his perception. Qin Wentian didn't see what was below, but he knew that there was a terrifying evil existence hidden below the precipice. No! In the Pill Emperor Hall, a roar of agony and despair accompanied by the melody of a sword echoed through the air. Qin Wentian roared to the heavens as he continued stepping out, as though he wanted to rush towards the forbidden gate. His killing intent engulfed the entire space, causing people to feel a bone-chilling coldness in their hearts. Why did Qin Wentian feel such despair? Bzzz, bzzz, bzzz. Atop the towering Great Hall, a few silhouettes slowly walked over, descending upon the surroundings of Qin Wentian. They stared at Qin Wentian, who was howling in agony, yet their eyes were incomparably cold, devoid of any emotions. Despair, this is only the beginning. A cold voice rang out. After which, the silhouettes surrounding Qin Wentian waved their hands, and in an instant, numerous terrifying stone pillars descended from the skies, landing in the surroundings of Qin Wentian. Boom, boom, boom. The stone pillars were connected by an invisible force. Those silhouettes coldly stared at the silhouette of that young man. For daring to offend my Pill Emperor Hall, your girlfriend shall be consigned to eternal damnation. As for you, your soul shall be stripped away. As the sound of his voice faded, a terrifying might enveloped Qin Wentian, who was in the center of the stone pillar. A terrifying light radiated from the pillar, causing countless people to tremble. Those are the Vice Hall Masters of the Pill Emperor Hall. They activated the soul-severing formation of the Pill Emperor Hall, forcibly stripping away Qin Wentian's soul. No matter how strong the sword is, Qin Wentian will die for sure. The spectators sighed in their hearts. Despite Qin Wentian's outstanding talent, there was no doubt that he would die today. And also Mo Qingqing. What a pity for this immortal couple, to be killed so tragically. Yet, it was as though Qin Wentian hadn't heard the words of those silhouettes. He inclined his head, his eyes that seemed to have come from the depths of hell stared at the skies as a single teardrop flowed down his face. Only to see that his lips were trembling. At this moment, a gust of wind rose up in the Pill Emperor Hall. The raging wind gusted by, extremely cold, extremely cold. At this moment, astral light cascaded down from the skies. Countless constellations cascaded downwards, landing on Qin Wentian. At this moment, Qin Wentian stood there, as though he was a silhouette from the primordial era, or an ancient divinity, accepting the worship of the people from all directions. Between the heavens and earth, a demonic wind could be heard, as demonic howls could be heard. The chant of the demonic divinities, ancient will connecting the heavens. Gathering demonic chi from the 8 directions, devouring demonic energy from the starry skies, connecting the 8 demonic divinities. My life, demon transformation. An ancient voice rang out, as though it originated from the primordial era. Tears flowed down from the corners of Qin Wentian's eyes. His body was currently undergoing a terrifying transformation. Chapter 425. Boundless demonic chi converged from the heavens and earth, landing on Qin Wentian's body. The spectators only saw his body growing larger and larger, as the terrifying shadows of the primordial demonic beasts flickered, interweaving with each other on Qin Wentian's body. It was as though demonic divinities from the 8 directions were descending on his body. Kirin, ferocious and violent. Great rock, with a wingspan of 1,000 miles, causing raging winds and gigantic waves. Vermilion bird, with a long screech, as though the heavens and earth were trembling, blazing flames incinerating the heavens. The winged dragon of the 9 heavens was like the sovereign of demons, peering down at the heavens and earth, unexcelled in the world. These terrifying demonic shadows all landed on Qin Wentian's body, as though they were from the void, able to communicate with the demonic divinities from the 8 directions. In that instant, the countenances of countless people changed. The eyes of those from the Pill Emperor Hall flickered with a terrifying light as they channeled their astral energy into the stone pillars, causing them to float up into the air. A resplendent light enveloped Qin Wentian, transforming into a halo that seemed capable of shredding everything, wanting to forcefully extract Qin Wentian's soul from his body. However, Qin Wentian's body grew more and more majestic. Demonic qi towered up into the skies, breaking apart the halo. He inclined his head, staring at the heavens. At this moment, there were no more tears, only the coldness of despair. Roar! The demon's sword trembled violently as a shocking scene appeared on it. Over there, a great rock could be seen spreading its wings, soaring through the heavens and earth. With a flap of its wings, it could cover a distance of 1,000 miles. The demon's sword let out a shrill cry, causing the hearts of the spectators to tremble violently. This demon's sword actually had something to do with the primordial great rock. The great rock spread its wings, refusing to fly because the heavens were too low. Everyone thought of the reason why the demon's sword didn't appear throughout the ages was because it hated the fact that the heavens were too low. There was a legend in ancient times. There was a gigantic bird that resided in the mountains, unable to fly even after 1,000 years. When people asked what kind of bird it was and why it didn't fly, the bird replied, "I'm a great rock in the clouds, I only hate the heavens for being too low and unwilling to fly." The questioner sneered. If it was a great peng in the clouds, why didn't it have wings? How could it dare to mock the heavens for being low? When the bird heard this, it was enraged. It cried out in grief, and the mountains shook. Heaven and earth trembled. Boundless mountains were uprooted, and within them, a pair of heaven-shaking wings appeared. As it turned out, those boundless mountains were the wings of the giant bird. The great rock spread its wings and soared into the clouds, charging into the heavens and slamming into the heavens. It let out a mournful cry as it slammed into the heavens. In the end, the heavens couldn't be broken, and the great rock died with a mournful cry. It fell to the ground and transformed back into a mountain range. Now, this sword was like a rock, hating the heavens for being too low. The demonic qi on Qin Wentian's body grew stronger and stronger. Gradually, the shadow of an enormous rock appeared on his body, with a wingspan of a few thousand meters. Demonic qi continued to pour down from the starry sky, converging on Qin Wentian, transforming into something corporeal. All of a sudden, Qin Wentian vanished. It disappeared. The scene in front of them was so shocking that it deeply stimulated everyone's heart. That 1,000-meter great rock abruptly opened its eyes. The coldness in its eyes was so bone-piercing that it caused people to feel a boundless chill. Abruptly, a long screech echoed out as the wings of the great rock spread out, spanning a distance of 3,000 meters. A raging wind gusted as demonic qi filled the entire Pill Emperor Hall. That great rock was transformed by Qin Wentian. The spectators only felt waves of shock rocking their hearts. They had never heard of such a situation before. How could Qin Wentian transform into a great rock? The demonic qi of heaven and earth descended upon his body. The aura of the great rock soared madly, and it was many times stronger compared to Qin Wentian. It actually broke through the middle 3 levels of Heavenly Dipper, breaking through to the upper 3 levels of Heavenly Dipper. Gathering the demonic qi from the 8 directions, devouring the demonic qi from the starry skies, communicating with the demonic divinities of the 8 directions. Qin Wentian swallowed boundless amounts of demonic qi, accumulating a towering demonic qi. Did he transform into a demon? The hearts of the spectators couldn't help but tremble. This was too terrifying. This was the first time they saw someone transforming into a demon. In the great hall that towered into the skies, a white-robed silhouette stood there, staring down at everything. When he saw Qin Wentian transforming into a demon, a dazzling light flashed in his eyes. Demonic divinity sacrificial transformation. The ancient kingdom of Grand Xia used the vermilion bird as their totem, worshipping the vermilion bird demonic divinity. The demonic divinity sacrificial transformation was a supreme secret art that could transform one into a demonic divinity. However, according to what he knew, although this art existed, no one had ever succeeded in cultivating it. Why was this young man able to use the demonic divinity sacrificial transformation so easily? Qin Wentian, who was at the first level of Heavenly Dipper, could actually communicate with the demonic divinity by chanting the words of the ancient demons. Luo He's countenance was also filled with shock. She had never imagined that a puny little Qin Wentian, although he had the mandate of heaven, was still a mere Heavenly Dipper sovereign. Yet today, he was able to display his might in her Pill Emperor Hall, causing such a commotion. Only to see the astral energy from the few experts surrounding Qin Wentian gushing out frenziedly, landing on the stone pillar. The stone pillar shone with a resplendent light as a corona of light cascaded downwards, landing on the body of the great rock. An unparalleled might seemed as though it wanted to extract his soul from his body. The great rock inclined its head, howling madly. Demonic wind danced wildly in the air, its wings flapping violently. The silhouettes in the distance were all ruthlessly flung backwards. They couldn't even withstand the aftershocks. However, their gazes were still fixated on the terrifying silhouette of the great rock. 1,000 meters long great rock, with a wingspan of 3,000 meters. Was he really Qin Wentian in his human form? In that case, was Qin Wentian a human or a demonic beast? They only saw the sharp claws of the great rock acting like arms, firmly latching onto the demon's sword as it let out a frenzied screech. However, the demon's sword was similarly wailing in agony. However, even with the strength of the great rock, it had no way to control the demon's sword. The power radiating from it was even stronger than Qin Wentian in his human form. Qin Wentian had transformed into a great rock, yet the demon's sword hated the fact that the heavens were too low. The eyes of the great rock were incomparably cold, resisting the pain of the corona of light seizing away his soul. Abruptly, he dove downwards, directly using his body to pierce through the sword. Despite the toughness of his body, wherever the sword passed by, fresh blood splattered everywhere. An incomparably large gash appeared on the body of the great rock. A crack appeared on his body, and from that crack, boiling hot blood flowed out, dripping onto the demon's sword. Every drop of blood seemed to be boiling, and if all the blood that dripped onto the demon's sword dripped onto the ground, it would be enough to form a small pool of water. Madness, this is too crazy. The spectators were speechless when they saw Qin Wentian's actions. Not only did he transform into a great rock, he even tore apart his body, allowing the demon's sword to drink the demonic blood of the great rock. That gigantic body wrapped around the demon's sword, using his own blood to feed it. His wings closed as he stared coldly at the experts from the Pill Emperor Hall, as well as the towering ancient hall. His eyes flickered with a coldness that seemed to originate from the depths of hell. Kill him. The few vice leaders of the Pill Emperor Hall felt an intense sense of danger. However, the soul-severing formation was actually unable to extract Qin Wentian's soul. Right now, his soul was incomparably stable. Rumble the stone pillar soared up into the skies. The few of them directly launched their attacks, blasting out death imprints. As these death imprints blasted out, it felt as though the vitality of the heavens and earth was being sucked dry. This entire space was filled with a deathly stillness as the pressure bore down on the great rock. Bzzz. A raging wind gusted as the wings of the great rock spread open. A supreme sword light erupted forth, directly shattering the death imprints. After which, the stone pillar was reduced to dust under the might of the sword chi. Bzzz. The great rock spread its wings and soared, traversing a distance of 10 million meters in the blink of an eye. The spectators couldn't even see the silhouette of the great rock, they only saw the fluttering of its wings. After which, they saw a gigantic sword pierce through the body of a peak-level Heavenly Dipper sovereign. The sharp talons of the great rock grabbed onto one end of the gigantic sword, as though the sword intent of the gigantic sword was connected to the demon's sword. My will, is the sword intent, the sword intent, is my will. The other talon of the great rock directly swiped downwards. Instantly, the body of a peak-level Heavenly Dipper sovereign was directly shattered into pieces. Behind the great rock, the demon's sword let out a shrill cry as its sword intent permeated the entire space, emitting a resplendent light that tore apart all the experts. The spectators who were far away continued retreating, wanting to retreat to a safe distance. At this moment, the eyes of the great rock were fixed on Luohi. Instantly, Luohi only felt her entire body turning cold. Just a single glance from the great rock was enough to cause despair to well up in her heart. Leaving aside the fact that she had the demon's sword, even if she was separated from the demon's sword, this great rock would still be able to easily tear her apart. After all, her cultivation base was only at the 6th level of Heavenly Dipper. Bzzz. A raging wind gusted by, Luohi directly closed her eyes. How fast was the great rock? In the ancient legends, the great rock hated the fact that the heavens were too low and refused to fly. It soared up into the heavens, only to crash into the heavens and die. One could very well imagine how fast the ancient great rock was. Luohi knew that she wouldn't be able to dodge its attack. Vile creature. A cold voice abruptly rang out as the gigantic body of the great rock appeared before Luohi. However, it was blocked by a person. At the instant this person stood in front of Luohi, a constellation manifested in the air. The airspace above the Pill Emperor Hall transformed into a starry night sky. This constellation contained boundless might, and with a casual lift of his hand, he actually managed to block the attack of the great rock. A celestial phenomenon ascendant, a legendary realm. From afar, the spectators all stared at the constellation. Even the Pill Emperor himself had personally appeared. Luohi was the daughter of the Pill Emperor. If the Pill Emperor didn't appear, Luohi would definitely die. Nobody could have imagined that Qin Wentian would be able to do this. Incinerate. The white-robed figure coldly spat out. The constellation in the air enveloped the great rock, and in an instant, the entire body of the great rock was engulfed in flames of death. Bzzz. A raging wind gusted by, the great rock soared up into the skies before swooping down again. Its gigantic body landed beside the demon's sword, and its sharp talons directly grabbed hold of the demon's sword as its cold eyes stared fixedly at the Pill Emperor. The great rock howled in anguish. Rumbling sounds echoed out as the demon's sword was actually uprooted from the ground, hovering in the air. For the first time, the demon's sword was uprooted from the ground. Die! The Pill Emperor flicked a finger at the great rock. Momentarily, the constellation in the sky manifested the flames of death, burning away the life of the great rock. So what if the great rock was a Heavenly Dipper sovereign when facing a celestial phenomenon ascendant? The great rock continued howling in anguish. It lifted the demon's sword and soared through the air, ignoring the pain of being incinerated as it soared towards the great hall. Slowly, it descended from the skies, above the great hall. The demon's sword was slowly lifted up. This scene caused the breathing of the spectators to halt. Vile beast, you dare! The Pill Emperor howled in rage. The light from the constellation grew even more terrifying, yet the demon's sword slashed down from the skies, as though it was fulfilling its promise. Today, as long as the Pill Emperor Hall didn't collapse, he wouldn't leave. Chapter 426. Seeing the great rock slashing down with the demon's sword, the spectators from afar all felt their hearts pounding as they held their breaths. With this slash of his sword, even if he died, the Pill Emperor Hall would forever be nailed to the pillar of shame. This day would be recorded in the annals of Grand Xia's history. Countless silhouettes of the Pill Emperor Hall appeared. They either came from different locations or from the towering Great Hall. All of them stared dumbfoundedly at the silhouette of the great rock in the air. Their bodies were all trembling in fear. Who? A thunderous roar rang out. Abruptly, another constellation manifested in the air. This time around, the constellation seemed to symbolize death. Boundless death astral light cascaded down onto the great rock, yet the eyes of the great rock were filled with an unyielding resolution. The great rock hated the heavens for being too low when it spread its wings, let alone the Pill Emperor Hall. The great rock let out a mournful cry, the sword followed suit. The 1,000-meter-long gigantic sword, containing an overwhelming sword intent, slashed down from the skies. Even celestial phenomenon ascendants wouldn't dare to block this attack head-on. Luo he stared at the descending sword as her countenance turned ashen. Suddenly, she was thinking, was her method of doing things right? If she had fought with her father, not allowing Mo Qingqing to become the pill body of the old ancestor, and not objecting to the relationship between her and the young man who transformed into a great rock, would the history of Grand Xia take a different direction? She didn't know. The impact she felt when she saw that sword slashing down was simply too overwhelming. Dragging the sword for 100,000 miles, using his blood to feed the demon sword, transforming into a great rock, using his body to feed the sword, wanting to cleave the Pill Emperor Hall apart. Yet all of this was accomplished by a young man at the Heavenly Dipper realm. He who had sunk into madness, no longer cared about the consequences. He didn't care about life or death. So what if he became the enemy of the entire Grand Xia? In Luo He's entire life, she had never met such a crazy person before. His obsession could shake the heavens. Naturally, other than shock, Luo He was filled with rage and killing intent. This matter had arisen because of her, and now, the Pill Emperor Hall was shamed. If Qin Wendian didn't die today, the Pill Emperor Hall would become the laughingstock of Grand Xia. How could the Pill Emperor in front of her not be shocked as well? Earlier when he sensed the might of the demon sword, he had already appeared. But he didn't expect the things that happened after that. The demonic divinity sacrificial transformation, transforming into a primordial great rock, using his blood as a sacrifice to the demon sword. If he knew this would happen, he, the Pill Emperor, would have disregarded his status and acted to subdue Qin Wendian. But now, it was already too late even if he wanted to subdue Qin Wendian. Not only that, it even alerted another old man from the Pill Emperor Hall who was in closed-door seclusion at the peak of the Pill Emperor Hall. Puchi, the demon's sword slashed down, the majestic Pill Emperor Hall shone with a resplendent light, as though there was a towering might blocking it. However, the demon's sword transformed into a primordial great rock, possessing an aura capable of breaking the heavens, let alone a mere Pill Emperor Hall. A crisp cracking sound could be heard as the sword slashed down from the middle. The towering palace hall was split into two. It was actually split into two, from the clouds all the way to the bottom. Everything within it was destroyed. Many people in the surroundings of the Heaven Ascension Great Hall stared at the scene in shock. After which, a gust of sword wind gusted by, as soft sounds rang out. Numerous silhouettes were directly turned into dust by the sword wind, dissipating with the wind. They didn't even know how they died. A single sword slashed apart the Pill Emperor Hall, causing countless experts to fall. The spectators in the distance were all stifled, staring at the scene in front of them, their eyes even forgot to move. The Pill Emperor Hall was cleaved apart, split into two. A single sword slashed into pieces. In the 9 continents of Grand Xia, the Pill Emperor Hall that was ranked within the top 5, the Pill Emperor Hall, was actually cleaved apart by a young man at the Heavenly Dipper realm in the form of a primordial great rock. It was unknown how much of a storm would this sword strike cause in Grand Xia. In the air, 2 constellations could be seen. One was the constellation of the Pill Emperor, while the other belonged to the ancient experts of the Pill Emperor Hall. When they saw the Pill Emperor Hall being split apart, their long robes fluttered in the wind. The killing intent in their eyes was incomparably terrifying. Die! That old man blasted out with a palm strike as a terrifying imprint of death descended from the heavens. His constellation also radiated a fearsome will of death. However, Qin Wendian acted as though he didn't see it. He brandished his sword in front of him, blocking the attack of his opponent. His body was being scorched by the flames of death, and he was in extreme agony. However, it was as though he couldn't feel it at all. He continued moving forward, dragging the demon's sword behind him as he advanced towards the forbidden ground. Everywhere the great rock passed by, sword intent would engulf the heavens and earth. The buildings and grand halls of the Pill Emperor Hall were all destroyed, and those who didn't manage to leave were all slain by the sword might. The Qin Wendian now no longer cared about anything. His huge eyes focused only on the front. The monstrous sword might gathered once again. The Pill Emperor and the old man from the Pill Emperor Hall appeared before Qin Wendian. Their eyes flickered with a terrifying coldness as a destructive might gushed forth from them. The eyes of the great rock stared at the two people in front of him. There wasn't the slightest bit of fear in his eyes. His body once again flew towards the sword. His healed body felt as though it was being sliced open again. Every drop of blood was boiling hot. Boom! The body of the great rock seemed to be on fire. That was the power of his bloodline burning. The terrifying aura of the great rock was rising rapidly, getting stronger and stronger. That aura was already at the peak of the Heavenly Dipper realm, and it seemed like it wanted to break through to the next realm. However, a Heavenly Dipper sovereign was still a Heavenly Dipper sovereign. Without sufficient comprehension, how could he step into the celestial phenomenon realm? The aura of the great rock reached its peak. His bloodline caused the screeching of the demon's sword to intensify. On the other side, two celestial phenomenon ascendants gathered the power of their respective constellations. The Pill Emperor's body was covered in 9 colored flames of destruction, while the other celestial phenomenon ascendant condensed a true seal of life and death. The seal of life and death was one of the 9 ultimate arts of Grand Xia, and it had fallen into the hands of the Pill Emperor Hall. Now, in the hands of a celestial phenomenon ascendant, the death chi radiating from it was sufficient to destroy the heavens and earth, causing everything in the surroundings to turn black. The seal of life and death was a seal of life and death. If one wanted to live, one would live. If one wanted to die, they would die. Once the death seal was unleashed, it could steal the vitality of the heavens and earth. Even if it was the great rock in the clouds, if it was struck by it, it would die without a doubt. The spectators from afar were already numb to the sight of Qin Wendian transforming into a great rock, facing off against two celestial phenomenon ascendants. Everything that happened today would be something they would never forget for the rest of their lives. At this moment, a thought appeared in their minds. They didn't want Qin Wendian to die here. Now that he had transformed into a great rock, if he could survive this calamity, would he be able to break through the skies of Grand Xia in the future? However, it was too difficult for Qin Wendian to survive. Two celestial phenomenon ascendants, existences that stood at the peak of Grand Xia, wanted to kill Qin Wendian. The seal of life and death as well as the 9 colored flames of destruction flew towards Qin Wendian. The destructive energy contained within them seemed to have already sucked away all the life force in this space. However, at this moment, the great rock let out a mournful cry. Its wings flapped violently as its body spun madly, transforming into a tornado. The sword danced along with it. Bzzz. The demon's sword carried with it an unparalleled might as it was flung out by Qin Wendian. Everywhere it passed, the earth was torn asunder. With a thunderous boom, the seal of life and death was shattered, and the 9 colored flames were extinguished. The two ascendants of the Pill Emperor Hall instantly dodged. That demon's sword passed right through them, it was unknown where it was heading to. Bzzz. A raging wind howled, the great rock that had transformed into a tornado vanished, leaving a trail of wind behind it as it sped through the space between the two ascendants. Not good. The Pill Emperor stared at the end of the demon's sword as his countenance abruptly changed. Qin Wendian was actually flying towards the forbidden ground. They stepped out, vanishing in an instant. However, it was already too late. The speed of the demon's sword was incomparably fast. It was flung out by Qin Wendian with all the strength he could muster. Everywhere it passed, the great hall would be destroyed, the ground would be torn apart, until it collided with the entrance to the forbidden ground. It was rumored that this entrance was the sacred ground of the Pill Emperor Hall. Only some of the more outstanding females from the Pill Emperor Hall would be able to enter. But at this moment, the entrance to the forbidden ground had already been broken apart. The demon's sword directly shattered the entrance and continued on its way, breaking through the clouds and shredding apart the aura of the sacred ground, directly piercing into the mountain rampart of the Mountain of Death. The mountain rampart continued to crumble as gigantic boulders rained down from the sky, burying the mountain below. A terrifying aura gushed forth from the bottom of the cliff, shattering the falling boulders into pieces. The two silhouettes as well as the great rock descended at the same time, their speed inconceivably fast. The great rock hovered above the cliff, its talons once again grabbing hold of the demon's sword. Its eyes were fixed on the ground below, staring at the bottom of the cliff. Over there, countless skeletons and corpses could be seen everywhere, covering the entire canyon. Over there were also some females. They were all so beautiful, yet they resembled walking corpses. Their aura was slowly being devoured by the skeletons below. Mo Qingcheng was there as well. The instant the eyes of the great rock landed on Mo Qingcheng, the coldness radiating from it was incomparably terrifying. So this is the sacred ground of the Pill Emperor Hall. So many beautiful females with outstanding talent are being used to rear evil skeletons. An extremely cold voice rang out from the mouth of the great rock. At this moment, it wanted nothing more than to destroy this so-called sacred ground of the Pill Emperor Hall. The voice of the great rock drifted through the air, drifting into the ears of those outside the Pill Emperor Hall. When they heard this, their hearts violently pounded. Indeed, at this moment, they could also sense an evil aura gushing forth from there. The Pill Emperor Hall used female disciples to rear evil skeletons. This discovery caused the bodies of many to involuntarily tremble. This was too terrifying. Staring at the majestic Pill Emperor Hall in front of them, the transcendent power of Grand Xia for thousands of years, the sacred ground of alchemy, a place revered by countless people, was actually used to rear evil skeletons? Not only that, Mo Qingcheng was sent there. The reason why Qin Wendian disregarded everything and rushed in, was precisely because of Mo Qingcheng. So it turned out that the reason why the Pill Emperor Hall accepted Mo Qingcheng as their disciple, and why Luo He spent so much effort to nurture Mo Qingcheng, was because of this. The spectators from afar stared at Luo He as though they were looking at a venomous witch. When they thought of that beautiful silhouette that could topple empires, they couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts. Such a transcendent power was the hegemon of the Moon continent, and was revered by countless people. Was the truth behind all this so cruel? Luo He naturally felt the gazes of the spectators. Her countenance grew incredibly unsightly to behold. From today onwards, the reputation of the Pill Emperor Hall was completely ruined by that young man. Chapter 427. The Pill Emperor and that ancient expert all landed at the edge of the cliff. Right now, their countenances were incomparably unsightly to behold. Qin Wendian had actually disturbed the existence at the bottom of the cliff. Vile creature. A cold voice came directly from the bottom of the cliff. It was so cold that it seemed as if the temperature of the entire space had plummeted. The Pill Emperor and the ancient expert turned their gazes downwards, as deep respect could be seen flickering in their eyes. The two of them bowed. "Ancestor, please forgive us. A mere vile creature actually dared to disturb my cultivation. How are you all going to control the Pill Emperor Hall? Quickly settle this." That voice rang out once more, exuding an unexcelled aura. His voice rang out, echoing through the air. Those who were observing from afar also heard it, and they all seemed to have understood something. That skeleton at the bottom of the cliff was actually an ancestor of the Pill Emperor Hall. Could it be that the ancestor of the Pill Emperor Hall wanted to use some forbidden method to revive? Reviving was a great taboo of the heavens. Hence, the Pill Emperor Hall used Mo Qingcheng and the other outstanding disciples to nurture him, using the lives of so many people in exchange for his revival. Such a method was simply too cruel. However, for the sake of their ancestor, the Pill Emperor Hall would definitely be willing to do anything. Once this ancestor was revived, it was unknown what kind of storm would he cause in Grand Xia. The hearts of those from the Hua clan, Chen clan, Star-Seizing Manor, and the other transcendent powers all trembled. The secrets of the Pill Emperor Hall had never been made known to outsiders. They had always wanted to uncover the secrets within, yet even the most outstanding disciples of the Pill Emperor Hall didn't know about it. Only those at the peak of the Pill Emperor Hall would know about it. Qing Cheng. The eyes of Qin Wentian, who was in the form of a great rock, flickered with boundless coldness. He pulled out the demon's sword and slammed it downwards, aiming for the bottom of the cliff. The whistling sword intent gushed forth, sweeping everything apart. However, one of the skeletons below seemed to have moved as a pair of evil eyes stared up at the sky. In an instant, numerous chains of darkness abruptly appeared in the center of the precipice. The demon's sword slammed down, slamming into the chains. Cracking sounds rang out as cracks appeared on the chains, but they didn't shatter. Qin Wentian had already exhausted too much of his energy. In fact, even his blood was almost completely drained. Right now, the demon's sword he controlled had no way to shake this terrifying skeleton. Wentian. Mo Qingqing inclined her head and stared at Qin Wentian, who was in the form of a great rock. Tears flowed unceasingly down her face. That skeleton was still absorbing her aura. Mo Qingqing couldn't move at all. Up in the sky, the King of Elixirs and the King of Elixirs slowly walked down. 9 colored flames fell from the sky and burned Qin Wentian's body. At the same time, a terrifying death seal slammed down and landed on the rock's huge body. The body of the great rock trembled violently as it unceasingly coughed out fresh blood, dripping onto the demon's sword. The wings of the great rock could blot out the sun, yet it still couldn't withstand the attacks of a celestial phenomenon ascendant. But even so, Qin Wentian could still endure the pain. The only thing he couldn't endure was the fact that Mo Qingqing's essence was being absorbed by the skeleton. His ice-cold eyes were filled with despair, as well as tears. Dumbo, you have to live on well. You have to live on well. A smile that could topple empires suddenly appeared on Mo Qingqing's countenance. Although her tears flowed down, she was still smiling radiantly. Meeting you, I have no regrets in this life. It's enough. Mo Qingqing murmured. Her body began to burn up. In the ancient formation, the secret art you obtain should be the demonification art. I've also obtained a secret art that allows me to transform my entire life's worth of energy into a pill. Mo Qingqing smiled. I didn't want to use it because I knew that you would definitely forbid me from using it. But now, I have no other choice. The essence in Mo Qingqing's body began to combust, and the skeleton below her began to move, devouring her essence at an even faster rate. However, it seemed as though it still had no way to stop Mo Qingqing. A skeleton crawled up from the ground and stretched out its arms, wanting to stop her. But Mo Qingqing merely opened her mouth and spat out a resplendent medicinal pill, instantly flying towards Qin Wentian. Dumbo, that's my heart. Mo Qingqing was still smiling as her body slowly collapsed onto the ground. Qin Wentian stared at the medicinal pill floating in front of him. That pill was in the shape of a heart. The skeleton's arms shot towards the sky. Qin Wentian opened his mouth and abruptly inhaled, sucking the pill into his mouth. However, he didn't swallow it, he merely held it in his mouth. Mo Qingqing's body slumped onto the stone platform, softly lying there. She was very quiet, with a smile on her face. It was as though she wanted to imprint the most beautiful moment of her into Qin Wentian's memory. Her long hair draped over the stone platform, and tears could be seen flowing down the corners of her smiling eyes. Although she had no regrets in this life. But how could she bear to leave? Dumbo. A thought appeared in Mo Qingqing's mind. Dumbo, I don't want to leave. I really don't want to. But you have to live well. This voice actually appeared in Qin Wentian's heart, as though it was transmitted through the medicinal pill in his mouth. She didn't want to leave, she still wanted to be together with him. But for him, she had no other choice. Roar! The great rock howled in grief as its body slammed into the sword. Fresh blood unceasingly flowed into the sword, disregarding everything else, disregarding its own life. The howls of grief continued unceasingly as the flames on its body continued to burn. The shadow of the great rock appeared within the sword as well. His sharp claws grabbed towards the demon sword. It was unknown where Qin Wendian got his strength from. A raging wind gusted by as he actually managed to pull the demon's sword out of the ground. His silhouette instantly vanished from sight as he stabbed out with the sword towards that old antique in the air. The countenance of that old antique drastically changed. In the air, astral light cascaded downwards as he retreated while simultaneously blasting out countless life and death seals. However, at this moment, Qin Wendian didn't care about his own life. He only wanted to take his opponent's life. Bang, 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 the ancient seals shattered unceasingly. It was unknown how terrifying the power of the gigantic sword was. Boundless sword intent lacerated the body of that old antique as fresh blood splattered everywhere. Vile beast! That old antique roared in rage. A gigantic constellation appeared in his palm as he blasted it out. Boom! The demon's sword collided with the constellation, causing the walls of the cliff to be torn apart. The two of them were forced backwards, and that old antique expert coughed out fresh blood from the impact. But at this moment, the Pill Emperor arrived. 9 colored flames enveloped the entire space, enveloping the great rock within. The great rock screeched in agony. He slashed out with his sword, causing the Pill Emperor to explosively retreat. He stood together with that old antique expert as he stared at the burning Qin Wendian. Die! The great rock howled in grief. He directly pierced the demon's sword into his own body, staining it with his own blood. Puchi! Pulling out the demon's sword, Qin Wendian stared at the two people in front of him. His body revolved madly as he abruptly flung out the demon's sword. The 1,000-meter-long demon's sword blazed with blood as it transformed into a beam of light that shook the heavens, shooting towards the two celestial phenomenon ascendants. The countenances of the two drastically changed. They stomped on the ground, causing the earth of the Pill Emperor Hall to tremble as they flew towards the gigantic demon's sword. However, they had no way to block it. Boundless astral energy flowed into their palms. They blasted out with their palms as a resplendent constellation manifested before them, transforming into a heavenly rampart that blocked their path, colliding with the demon's sword. Kacha! Cracks appeared on the heavenly rampart as the demon's sword pierced through it. Sword might gushed out, lacerating the bodies of the two ascendants. With a thunderous boom, the heavenly rampart was completely shattered, but the demon's sword continued forward. Scram! The Pill Emperor and the old antique expert didn't even dare to split apart. Puchi! The two of them coughed out mouthfuls of blood as they were blasted through the air, slamming heavily into the ground. But even so, they managed to block the momentum of the demon's sword. Boom! The demon's sword pierced into the ground as the sword intent lacerated their bodies, causing their blood to splatter unceasingly. It was a terrifying sight to behold. Two terrifying existences at the celestial phenomenon realm were in such a miserable state. Their auras fluctuated wildly, and they were so heavily injured that they couldn't even stand up. Their gazes once again turned to Qin Wendian. Right now, Qin Wendian was already covered in blood, and was still being burned by the flames. His 1,000-meter-long body was enduring an indescribable pain, but what he felt was even more heartache. With a thunderous boom, the great rock collapsed onto the ground. Its gigantic eyes stared up at the skies as it spat out a medicinal pill. It still refused to swallow it. How could it swallow Qingqing's life? How could it do this? Tears appeared in its eyes once again. Hate that he didn't have the strength to save Qingqing. Hate that he still couldn't kill the Pill Emperor, couldn't destroy the Pill Emperor Hall. Go kill him. The Pill Emperor lay on the ground, swallowing a medicinal pill as he coldly commanded. Only now did the experts from the Pill Emperor Hall regain their senses. They were all extremely powerful characters in Grand Xia, yet they were all stunned into a daze by the battle earlier. At this moment, upon hearing the Pill Emperor's command, they all stepped out, moving towards the great rock lying on the ground. Qin Wendian had transformed into a great rock. If they didn't kill him today, the Pill Emperor Hall would be completely wiped from the map of Grand Xia in the future. But at this moment, an intense spatial fluctuation gushed over. Bzzz. A flawlessly beautiful silhouette appeared beside the great rock. This silhouette was akin to a celestial maiden, abruptly appearing. With a wave of her hand, an ice-cold snow lotus landed on Qin Wendian's body, extinguishing the flames on his body. She walked to the side of the great rock, and when she saw the eyes of the great rock staring at her, she didn't know what to feel in her heart. Qin Wendian mumbled. Before he died, he saw Qin once again. Only to see that Qin didn't say anything. Her hands folded into ancient seals as a fearsome spatial fluctuation gushed forth from her. Her long hair fluttered in the wind as blood seeped out from the corners of her mouth. Unseal. A calm voice rang out. Qin's body trembled unceasingly as terrifying rumbling sounds echoed out. It was as though there was a terrifying existence piercing through her body, causing her to cough out a mouthful of blood. She coughed out a total of 9 mouthfuls of blood. The experts in the surroundings rushed over, yet they were all obstructed by a formless spatial fluctuation. Qin walked to the side of Qin Wendian, placing her palms on his body. Spatial stripping. A fearsome spatial energy swept out, the flames on Qin Wendian's body were forcibly stripped away. She walked to the lower abdomen of Qin Wendian, her silhouette akin to that of a celestial maiden squatted down and lifted the great rock onto her back. This scene ruthlessly impacted the hearts and souls of the spectators. To think that such a beautiful woman would actually appear, using her delicate body to carry the dying great rock on her back. Trying to escape. A cold intent drifted over from the bottom of the precipice, only to see a sinister arm stretching out unceasingly, grabbing towards Qin. The spatial energy around Qin shattered as she coughed out another mouthful of blood, yet she still continued to carry the great rock on her back. In the air, the sound of a sigh could be heard. After which, a cracking sound rang out as the skeletal arm directly broke apart. A silhouette with his hands clasped behind his back descended from the skies, hovering in the air above the precipice. Below the precipice, more skeletal arms stretched out unceasingly. However, as the silhouette took a step forward, the sounds of shattering rang out unceasingly. Those skeletal arms were all reduced to dust, causing the entire precipice to tremble. This silhouette had his hands clasped behind his back, yet his gaze was fixed on Qin Wendian, who was on Qin's back. In his eyes, there was a boundless gentleness, as though he was looking at his own kin. Dragging the demon's sword for 100,000 miles, ascending the Pill Emperor Hall alone, sacrificing his blood to the demon's sword, transforming into a great rock. Such spirit, it doesn't lose out to you in the past. That silhouette stared at the skies as he sighed in his heart. It was as though there was a deep longing in his heart. His gaze then turned to the great rock, as the gentleness in his eyes seemed to be able to melt everything. Chapter 428. It had been over 20 years. The infant that once lay in his embrace, had now, for the sake of the obsession in his heart, disregarding life and death, dragged the sword for 100,000 miles, all the way to the Pill Emperor Hall. What more could he ask for? Staring at the great demonic rock, the countenance of that mysterious figure was still as gentle as ever, filled with deep emotions. He really wanted to act, but he had once promised that he would never act for him. His life had to be walked by himself. Only then would he be able to rely on his own strength to prop up the heavens. Growing up under their protection, when he was weak, he would always think of the protection of others, and not to prop up the heavens for them. In the past, just how exceptional was his spirit? How could his children be mediocre? How could they grow up under the wings of others? Today, when he heard that the mysterious figure dragged the sword for 100,000 miles, wanting to enter the Pill Emperor Hall, he came here to take a look. Finally, he saw the shadow of that mysterious figure in that infant. He was happy, gratified. There were too many trials and tribulations waiting for this child. He knew what kind of storms he would experience, hence there were many things that he had to face step by step. Even if he died, he had to face it alone. The path of life was long, and today, he had almost died in the Pill Emperor Hall. But wasn't this also a beginning, the beginning of a rebirth from the ashes? However, although this mysterious figure stood there, it was as though no one could sense his existence. The gazes of everyone were attracted by Qing and the Great Rock. He was like a passerby, and the only one who noticed his existence was the skeletal remains at the bottom of the cliff. More skeletons shattered the cliff and broke through the ground, grabbing at the mysterious man. However, at that moment, he slowly turned his gaze and looked at the ground below. With just a single glance, he looked at one of the caves. His deep gaze was filled with cold flames. Only to see him slowly walking down the cliff. Every step he took caused the entire cliff to tremble. It was as though this cliff was being enveloped by a mysterious rhythm. Peng, with a soft sound, the cliff seemed to fall downwards. The bones all turned into dust in the air. The figure was still standing with his hands clasped behind his back, staring at a cave abode. His eyes were like sharp swords, and there seemed to be a terrifying rhythm in the cave abode. Boom! Another light sound rang out as the entire cavern crumbled into pieces. Over there, an indistinct silhouette appeared. This silhouette was as handsome as a demon, and actually resembled a young man. His skin was sparkling and translucent, but his eyes were extremely terrifying. He inclined his head and stared at the silhouette in the air as he coldly asked, "Who are you?" As the sound of his voice faded, terrifying chains appeared from the cliff and locked onto the mysterious figure. The terrifying chains wrapped around the mysterious figure's body, and the terrifying evil fire of death started burning. However, the other party continued to slowly descend. He stood with his hands behind his back, ignoring the burning of the flames. Crisp cracking sounds rang out. The chains were broken. The flames continued to burn his body, but they couldn't move his body in the slightest. In the air, a resplendent constellation appeared. Not only did it envelop the cliff, it enveloped the entire Pill Emperor Hall as well. The vast Pill Emperor Hall seemed to be isolated from the outside world. The spectators outside couldn't see what was happening within the Pill Emperor Hall. What's going on? Another constellation appeared. The spectators inclined their heads, their countenances filled with shock. The two paragon-level characters of the Pill Emperor Hall, the celestial phenomenon Ascendant Pill Emperor, as well as an ancient expert, were all injured. Where did this constellation come from? Those from the Qin clan, Hua clan, Star Seizing Manor, and the other major powers had long fled the vicinity of the Pill Emperor Hall. But right now, they couldn't see anything. Just now, there seemed to be a faintly discernible supreme might permeating the air. They saw a mysterious figure floating above the cliff. He simply stood there, as though he didn't exist. He stood with his hands behind his back, as though he was carrying the entire sky on his back. Who was this person? Why did he come here? Nobody knew. Even Qin Wentian and Qing didn't know. Right now, Qin Wentian's consciousness was already blurry. Qing was still carrying Qin Wentian on her back. Her beautiful eyes stared at the constellation in the air as a powerful spatial energy enveloped both her and Qin Wentian. A spatial tempest gusted up. At this moment, she only wanted to bring Qin Wentian away from this place of trouble. Bzzz. The intense spatial fluctuations were directly broken apart. Qing discovered that this space had already been sealed by the constellation in the sky. Even if she used spatial teleportation, she wouldn't be able to leave this place. Cold eyes stared at the sky. She seemed to be extremely angry. "Little doll, you are not bad at all." A voice rang out, ringing out in Qing's ears. She was the only one who could hear it. Qing furrowed her brows. After which, she stared at the constellation in the air. A lazy silhouette appeared there, casually staring at everything below. He didn't do anything, he merely used the incomparably powerful energy of his constellation to seal the entire Pill Emperor Hall. "Who is it?" The countenances of the Pill Emperor and that ancient expert turned ashen. They stared at the blurry silhouette in the sky. Right now, they were all heavily injured, and the power of their constellations was being suppressed. They had never imagined that the Pill Emperor Hall would have such a gathering of geniuses today. Other than them, there were actually other terrifying celestial phenomenon ascendants here. Why did they come here? No one replied. The silhouette in the sky directly ignored the question of the Pill Emperor. On the other side of the cliff, the demonic young man also saw the constellation in the sky. His countenance grew incredibly unsightly as he asked, "You still have helpers?" The silhouette in the air slowly descended onto the stone platform, standing right on the platform Mo Qingcheng was on. He stared at the silhouette of the young man in front of him, as an unexcelled in the world could be seen in his eyes. "Helpers? When you were at your peak condition, killing you was as easy as flipping my palm. Let alone today, when you were on the brink of death, you revived." Only to see that mysterious silhouette slowly stretching out his palm. The heavens and earth, as well as the cliff, all of them were trembling violently. A supreme power seemed to be controlling the pulse of the entire heavens and earth, sealing the spiritual chi of the 10 directions mountain for you to absorb. Shatter it, destroy. He clenched his hand into a fist, and a shocking scene unfolded. The entire cliff seemed to collapse, and then explode, transforming into powder and dust. This scene caused the countenance of that young man to turn ashen. He turned his gaze towards the distance, only to see that within the cliff, there were 81 chains that were linked together, emitting cracking sounds unceasingly. Finally, a crisp sound rang out as the chains broke apart at the same time. Everything was turned into dust. Nothing could escape the might of that single clench of his fist. If the Pill Emperor had this level of strength, he only needed to clench his fist, and even if Qin Wendian could control the demon sword, he would still be turned into dust in an instant. There was no way for Qin Wendian to defend against such a level of power. The demonic young man's countenance turned ashen. With a stomp of his foot, the ground beneath him crumbled as boundless energy blasted towards the mysterious silhouette. However, his body actually shot up into the air, wanting to leave this place. "Do you think you can escape?" That mysterious silhouette clenched his fist. Instantly, the body of the demonic young man shattered into pieces, transforming into a pile of bones. This pile of bones was still frenziedly fleeing, containing a terrifying evil energy within. "Destroy." That mysterious silhouette waved his hand in the air. Crisp cracking sounds rang out as screams of misery rang out. That pile of bones shattered, yet it didn't die and continued to flee in all directions. In the air, a constellation manifested. Resplendent astral light cascaded downwards, landing on that pile of bones. In that space, everything was destroyed under the radiance of the constellation. Every inch of that pile of bones was turned into dust, disintegrated into nothingness. The old ancestor of the Pill Emperor Hall had racked his brains, wanting to be reborn through a skeleton. But now, because of Qin Wendian's presence in the Pill Emperor Hall, he had completely turned into dust, vanishing from this world. That mysterious silhouette didn't leave after killing his opponent. His eyes gleamed with sharpness as he flicked his sleeves, instantly destroying all the evil formations in this area. After that, he slowly turned, staring at the beautiful silhouette lying on the ground. "Child, it's been hard on you." Although this silhouette was a peak-level expert, the gaze in his eyes when he looked at Mo Qingcheng was also incomparably gentle. He had personally witnessed everything that happened here from the air. He knew that Qin Wendian dragged the sword 10,000 miles to the Pill Emperor Hall for the sake of this girl. And this girl was also willing to give up everything for him. Before she spat out the pill, there was a look of deep love in her eyes. Who could understand this? She didn't want to die, she didn't want to leave. But, she had no other choice. "The pill is here." That person inclined his head as he calmly spoke. Instantly, a raging wind gusted by as another silhouette walked over. This was none other than the silhouette on the constellation. He held a pill in his hands as he slowly descended in front of Mo Qingcheng. This pill was condensed from the essence and chi of Mo Qingqing's life. It contained her heart. You are both good girls. That silhouette placed the pill in front of Mo Qingqing. After which, the pill entered Mo Qingqing's mouth. His palms blasted out as the pill transformed into boundless spirit chi that permeated into Mo Qingqing's body. Since you have treated him like this, we won't let you down. However, in this life of his, he will definitely be able to shake the heavens and earth. If you want to be his wife, you have to have a meteoric rise as well. That mysterious silhouette murmured. After which, he turned his gaze onto the silhouette that arrived later. You, send her into the Green Clouds sect. This pill Emperor Hall is not worthy of this child. Right, it's just that it has been tough on the two of them. That silhouette nodded his head lightly. With a wave of his hand, he lifted Mo Qingqing up as he soared up into the skies. After which, that mysterious silhouette inclined his head and stared at the skies. His body slowly floated up into the air. An instant later, he appeared in the air above the precipice, staring at the silhouette of Qing, who was still carrying the great rock on her back. His eyes were still filled with gentleness. Good fellow, two such good children actually treat you so well. You are even more blessed compared to your father. In the future, don't let them down. That silhouette murmured. A warm smile could be seen on his face as his eyes flickered with traces of reminiscence. As he laughed, he took a step forwards, and in an instant, the entire Pill Emperor Hall trembled from the force of his footsteps. Chapter 429. As the mysterious silhouette walked forward, the entire Pill Emperor Hall trembled unceasingly, as though there was a mysterious rhythm to it. It was as though as long as he willed it, with just a single thought, he would be able to destroy this transcendent power that had existed for so many years. That mysterious silhouette slowly walked forward, and with every step he took, cracks would appear on the ground. Shattered pieces of bluestone floated in the air, right in front of that mysterious silhouette. Every step he took was the same. At this moment, the hearts of the spectators in the Pill Emperor Hall pounded in tandem with his footsteps. It was as though as long as he willed it, he could shatter the hearts of the spectators with a single step. Such a feeling was incomparably wondrous, inconceivable to those who heard it. How could there be such a terrifying character in the world? But right now, the spectators all felt the same way. This mysterious silhouette was undoubtedly a terrifying existence among celestial phenomenon ascendants, and was several times stronger compared to the Pill Emperor. As long as he willed it, he could easily slay the Pill Emperor. Such a character actually appeared in the Pill Emperor Hall, sealing this entire space. Sir, who might you be? The Pill Emperor and the other two celestial phenomenon ascendants stabilized their auras as they stood up, staring at the mysterious silhouette ahead. Their eyes were filled with an intense sense of wariness. Even when facing against Qin Wentian who wielded the demon sword, they only felt that Qin Wentian was akin to a demon, but they were still confident that they could deal with him. However, the person in front of them gave them a feeling that it was impossible for them to contend against him. If they clashed head-on, there would be no hope at all. They would be easily suppressed. Who am I? Are you even qualified to ask? That mysterious silhouette continued walking forward, abruptly waving his hands. The Pill Emperor only felt an immense force slamming into his body, causing him to groan in misery as he coughed out a mouthful of blood, his countenance pale white. He inclined his head and stared at the mysterious silhouette, his eyes flashing with rage. He was a lofty Pill Emperor. That mysterious silhouette frowned when he saw the expression on the Pill Emperor's face. He took another step forward as an even stronger pulsating pressure bore down on the entire space. His foot stomped on the ground. This stomp felt like he was stomping on the King of Pill's heart. A loud explosion could be heard as his face turned as pale as a sheet of paper. He almost fell to his knees, coughing out mouthfuls of blood. That silhouette didn't say anything. He only used his heart to tell the Dan King what was arrogance. Showing such an arrogant expression in front of him, he, the Dan King, wasn't worthy. Another one stepped out. Boom! The boundless pulsating energy once again landed on Dan King's body. His body was directly sent flying, and he continuously vomited blood. He was squatting on the ground, his face was completely devoid of blood. However, his heart was extremely tense, because he could clearly feel that the pulsating energy was about to descend upon him again. As long as his opponent took a step forward, he would be injured again. This feeling of helplessness made him despair. Qin Wentian inclined his head, staring at the mysterious silhouette. Ever since the destruction of the ancient Grand Xia Empire, how could there still be such a terrifying existence? Had they been hiding in dynasty all along? The lofty Dan King couldn't even muster the slightest bit of thoughts of resistance. He didn't even dare to look into the eyes of the mysterious silhouette. He was afraid that if he did, he would incur the dissatisfaction of the mysterious silhouette. Another step would trample on his heart. Even the lofty Dan King of the Pill Emperor Hall was in such a sorry state, let alone the others. They had no way to describe their emotions at this moment, they could only stare dumbly at the scene unfolding before their eyes. What happened today had toppled their understanding of the world. The Pill Emperor, who was rarely seen during normal times, was actually crushed into dregs, he didn't even have the strength to resist. Although the Pill Emperor was injured, even if the Pill Emperor was at his peak condition, the result would still be the same. They were all very clear of this point. As for the other ancient ascendant, he didn't even have the courage to resist. Such a character actually came to the Pill Emperor Hall. Who was he here for? Luo He's breathing was ragged, she stared dumbfoundedly at her father, the Pill Emperor, before shifting her gaze onto that mysterious and invincible existence. She discovered that the movements of the mysterious silhouette had halted. Coincidentally, the silhouette stopped beside the great rock Qin Wentian had transformed into. That silhouette slowly turned his gaze onto the great rock. At this moment, the great rock Qin Wentian had transformed into had already fainted due to his heavy injuries. Qing, from the start till the end, had her back facing the mysterious silhouette, not saying a single word. She didn't like to talk, she had always been like this. But her actions were always more concise and powerful than her words. Although the mysterious silhouette before her eyes was extremely powerful, Qing's gaze was as cold as ever. She stared icily at the mysterious silhouette, as though no one would be able to get close to her. A bitter smile involuntarily appeared on the mysterious silhouette's face when he saw the expression on Qing's face. However, although the smile was bitter, it was also warm. This little doll was truly cold. I know you're proficient in the Tao of space. It's my fault for being meddlesome and obstructing you from leaving. The mysterious silhouette gently laughed. I won't act to help him. This is the promise I made to his father. There's no need for you to tell him about what happened today. He has to walk his own path. By interfering today, I've already broken my promise. In the future, he will still be himself. Before he reaches a certain realm, I won't appear before him. The mysterious silhouette slowly spoke. After which, he pointed his finger at the heavens as a hole appeared in the constellation. Go, I believe you can take good care of him. That person continued. Qing's gaze was cold. After which, she turned her head as spatial energy enveloped her and the great rock within. However, at this moment, she turned her head back and glanced at the mysterious silhouette. She was still as cold as ever, yet she still spoke, "Thank you." As the sound of her voice faded, a powerful spatial fluctuation erupted. Together with the great rock, she directly vanished without a trace. A bitter smile appeared on the mysterious silhouette's face when he saw this scene. This girl was truly cold. Even the word, "thank you," was so cold. However, why didn't this coldness make him feel disgusted? On the contrary, it made him feel that she was cute. Maybe in his heart, he had already treated Qing as a junior. But of course, even if it wasn't him, no one would be angry when facing a celestial maiden like Qing. His gaze shifted over, causing the hearts of those from the Pill Emperor Hall to pound as their countenances turned as pale as paper. The promise he made to Qin Wentian's father. This mysterious silhouette really came here for Qin Wentian. This person actually knew Qin Wentian's father. Luo he didn't know what she was feeling in her heart. Did Qin Wentian really have no background? Maybe, his background was so terrifying that even the Pill Emperor Hall didn't dare to imagine it. Luo he suddenly discovered that not only was she was wrong beyond reason. She almost had the chance to change the fate of the Pill Emperor Hall. Do any of you know who he is? That silhouette was still as carefree as ever. His body floated in the air as he stared down at the crowd with disdain. The him now was completely different from the him when he was facing Qing. When he was facing Qing, he was as gentle as an elder. But at this moment, he was unexcelled in the world, standing with his hands clasped behind his back. The entire Pill Emperor Hall was nothing in his eyes. He asked, "Do any of you know who he is?" This he was naturally referring to Qin Wentian. Naturally, they didn't know. At this moment, they were all guessing that Qin Wentian might be the son of an old friend of the mysterious silhouette. However, the voice of the mysterious silhouette caused their hearts to tremble as their bodies trembled uncontrollably. "He is my young master." The silhouette of this mysterious silhouette was extremely light, so light that if one didn't pay close attention, they wouldn't be able to hear it. But this casual voice was like a bolt of lightning striking down from a clear sky. Qin Wentian was his young master. What sort of status was this? Being addressed as young master, one could very well imagine what sort of status Qin Wentian's father had. Such an expert was a terrifying existence that could look down on the entire Pill Emperor Hall. He stood there, unexcelled in the world, disdainfully looking down on the people of the Pill Emperor Hall, yet he referred to Qin Wentian as his young master. And before this, when Qin Wentian ascended to the Pill Emperor Hall alone, he was completely disregarded by them. Despite his outstanding talent, he wasn't given sufficient attention. Why? Because Qin Wentian didn't have a powerful background. They felt that everything that belonged to Qin Wentian could be snatched away by them. And a fallen genius wasn't a true genius. As for the Pill Emperor Hall, they were lofty and lofty, who would dare to question them? But reality was just so shocking. The things that happened in a single day felt as long as a lifetime, enough to be engraved in one's mind. Luo He's eyes turned sluggish as she stared dumbfoundedly at that powerful silhouette. He referred to Qin Wentian as young master. And she originally had a chance to make Qin Wentian her junior, becoming the lover of her disciple. Not only did she ruin such an opportunity, she even caused Qin Wentian to completely stand against her. Such a feeling, no one would be able to understand it. A sense of terror enveloped the entire Pill Emperor Hall. The reason why Qin Wentian ended up in such a miserable state today was undoubtedly because of the Pill Emperor Hall. In that case, how would this person deal with the Pill Emperor Hall? As though he could sense their fear, that mysterious expert inclined his head and stared at the skies. It was as though in his eyes, the Pill Emperor Hall didn't exist at all. He was filled with disdain, disdainful of the Pill Emperor Hall. "I won't kill you all." That mysterious expert spoke once more, causing everyone to heave a sigh of relief. However, if the matters today were to be leaked out, I dare to guarantee that the Pill Emperor Hall would be annihilated from the face of Grand Xia, completely erased from the face of Grand Xia. That expert spoke once more, his words causing the hearts of everyone to tremble. Naturally, they wouldn't doubt the strength of this mysterious expert. As for your lives, that is the path he should walk. I won't walk it in his place. For the next period of time, you all will have to spend it in torment, waiting for the revenge of the Pill Emperor Hall. That mysterious expert continued soaring up into the skies, his gaze fixed onto the demon sword embedded in the center of the Pill Emperor Hall. The demon sword shall remain here. When he descends once more and plucks out the demon sword, that day shall be the day of judgment for the Pill Emperor Hall. The song of victory belonging to him shall also be played. As the sound of his voice faded away, the constellations in the Pill Emperor Hall dissipated in an instant. When they inclined their heads again, that silhouette had already vanished. Only that unexcelled figure was left behind, unable to be erased from their hearts. That final voice he left behind reverberated for a very long time within the Pill Emperor Hall, resounding in the hearts of everyone. When he descends once more and plucks out the demon's sword, that day shall be the day of judgment for the Pill Emperor Hall. The song of victory belonging to him shall also be played. Chapter 430. The Pill Emperor Hall, one of the transcendent powers of Grand Xia. It was the king of the Moon continent, a power with a celestial phenomenon ascendant as its base. In the Grand Xia Empire, this place was considered a sacred ground for alchemy, and was worshipped by countless people. Those from the Pill Emperor Hall were all lofty existences, standing at the top of the 99 steps, gazing down disdainfully at the masses. In the Moon continent, when they moved about, they would always have their heads inclined upwards. It was always others who stared up at them from the ground. But today, at this moment, those who were still alive in the Pill Emperor Hall were all inclined their heads upwards, staring at the disappearing constellation in the air. The sunlight cascaded downwards, yet their heads were still inclined upwards, as though they were in a daze. Their hearts were still pounding furiously. Earlier, everything that happened in the Pill Emperor Hall seemed very short, but to them, it felt like an eternity, so long that it would leave a mark in their hearts for the rest of their lives. Even for the Pill Emperor, his heart was in a mess right now. His gaze was no longer as spirited as before. He still remembered back then when he walked down from the majestic hall, how imposing and unexcelled he was, exuding the aura of the #1 character in this world. But now, his brows were tightly furrowed, and his robes were tattered, stained with traces of blood. Today, the supreme existence of the Pill Emperor Hall finally understood what it meant by "there's always someone stronger than the heavens." Qin Wentian had left him an unforgettable experience. And at this moment, those spectating from afar were all filled with bewilderment and shock as they stared at the ancient Great Hall. The demon's sword was still there, embedded into the Pill Emperor Hall. Sword intent permeated the air, and as for the towering Great Hall, it had long been split into two by the demon's sword. Even the rocks on the ground had been shattered. How was this still the famous Pill Emperor Hall? It no longer exuded any sense of majesty at all. Only a sense of destruction could be felt. What happened just now? The hearts of the spectators pounded. They saw the experts of the Pill Emperor Hall, including the Pill Emperor, staring dumbfoundedly at the heavens. When the constellation enveloped the Pill Emperor Hall, who was it that descended? And who was it that used the power of the constellation to seal the entire Great Hall within? Where's Qin Wentian? It was at this time that they discovered to their astonishment that Qin Wentian, who had transformed into a rock, had actually disappeared. The rock had a wingspan of 3,000 meters. With such a huge body, even if it had fallen, its corpse should still be there. It was impossible for it to vanish into thin air. Even the cliff within the forbidden ground seemed to have been destroyed. How is Mo Qingcheng? There were countless doubts in the hearts of the crowd, but no one could clear them up. Senior. At this moment, the experts of the Hua clan arrived at the entrance of the Pill Emperor Hall, bowing to the Pill Emperor. This person was a king of elixirs, they naturally had to be respectful. However, at this moment, they only saw the king of elixirs turning around and glancing at them. His eyes were devoid of life, like an old man in his twilight years. Furthermore, his eyes were filled with coldness. Senior, may I ask what's going on? Someone asked. Scram! A thunderous roar rang out, the countenance of that person instantly paled. The Pill Emperor waved his hands as a terrifying flame energy blasted towards that person. The coldness in the eyes of the Pill Emperor caused that person to feel stifled. Senior. The countenances of those from the Hua clan all changed, they didn't know what they had done to anger the Pill Emperor. From today onwards, the Pill Emperor Hall shall enter closed-door seclusion, severing all grudges with the external world. Nobody is allowed to enter the Pill Emperor Hall for an indefinite period of time. The Pill Emperor's voice was ice-cold as he continued, now, all of you are to leave within the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. As the sound of his voice faded, the Pill Emperor waved his hands as a raging wind gusted by, as a stifling pressure bore down on everyone. The countenances of those from the Hua clan, Wang clan, Star-Seizing Manor, and the other transcendent powers were all incredibly unsightly to behold. What exactly happened? Why would the Pill Emperor give such an order? The Pill Emperor Hall shall enter closed-door seclusion, severing all grudges with the external world for an indefinite period of time. Such an order caused countless people to be in an uproar. They knew that this definitely had something to do with what happened after the Pill Emperor Hall's constellation enveloped the Pill Emperor Hall. Because, even if the Pill Emperor didn't say it, the others wouldn't dare to say it as well. The Pill Emperor gave such an order because of the words left behind by that supreme expert. What happened today was not to be leaked to the outside world. Once it was leaked, the Pill Emperor Hall would be purged from the Pill Emperor Hall. This meant that for those who knew of this matter, they had to be firmly controlled and confined within the Pill Emperor Hall. He had no choice but to give such an order. He didn't know who would flee the Pill Emperor Hall out of fear and divulge this secret. As the Pill Emperor, he naturally wouldn't allow such a thing to happen. The experts from the Pill Emperor Hall naturally understood the reason why the Pill Emperor gave such an order. Earlier, many thoughts flashed through their minds, and there were indeed some who wanted to flee. After offending such a terrifying character, they had no way to resist, they had no ability to resist. That was akin to a gigantic boulder pressing down on them, although it didn't directly crush them to death. But behind them, there was still a demon-level existence like Qin Wentian. One day, he would descend upon the Pill Emperor Hall and punish them for all the hatred they had for him. None of them had the ability to resist, none of them dared to pursue and kill Qin Wentian. They could only wait for the end of the world to descend. This was simply a dead knot. Qin Wentian didn't directly destroy the Pill Emperor Hall, yet he had cast a shadow over the entire Pill Emperor Hall. The hearts of everyone present felt as though there was a weight of 10,000 jin weighing down on them. And the person with the heaviest guts was none other than Luohi. Feeling the cold gazes of the crowd, Luohi only felt her entire body turning cold. Was this really her fault? Naturally not entirely. For the sake of their ancestor, anyone would be willing to sacrifice a Qin Wentian, a Mo Qingcheng. But on the surface, she was the mastermind. She was the one who ignited the flames of hatred in Qin Wentian's heart, causing him to slaughter his way into the Pill Emperor Hall. The Pill Emperor also turned his gaze onto Luohi. He wanted to punish Luohi, but now that things have come to this, what use was punishment? Everything they had done to Qin Wentian, that crazy young man was willing to disregard everything, dragging the sword for 100,000 miles. Would the young man who had transformed into a demon in the Pill Emperor Hall be able to forgive them for what they had done to Mo Qingcheng? This hatred could only be washed away with fresh blood. Staring at the towering demon sword, this demon's sword was like a pillar of humiliation to the Pill Emperor Hall. From now on, it would always be there, waiting for its owner to come and pluck it out from the ground, destroying this ancient great hall. How cruel was this reality? It was as cruel as what they did to Qin Wentian today. At that time, Qin Wentian had no strength to resist, he could only fight with his life on the line. The others also cast a deep glance at the demon's sword before turning and departing the area. How would they dare to refuse the Pill Emperor's banishment? It was just that the doubts in their hearts couldn't be resolved. Zhong Yi was also among the crowd. He had been observing everything that Qin Wentian had done. With regards to the successor of the Azure Emperor, today's events had truly shocked him. When he saw how helpless Qin Wentian was, his heart was filled with anxiety. But with a celestial phenomenon ascendant acting, he didn't even have the qualifications to participate. If he acted to save Qin Wentian, other than sending himself to death, there was no other use. At this moment, the image of that wild and violent demonified silhouette was still resounding in his mind. Was he still there? Zhong Yi had a feeling that Qin Wentian was definitely still alive. If not, the Pill Emperor Hall wouldn't have acted in such a manner. Perhaps there was a secret behind that young man that he didn't know about. Very swiftly, everyone left, bringing along boundless bewilderment as they returned to their respective halls. The Pill Emperor Hall was still as silent as ever. They only stared at the Pill Emperor, not daring to speak. Pressure, there was only pressure in the air. Without my command, no one is allowed to take a single step out of the Pill Emperor Hall. The Pill Emperor slowly spoke. After which, he lifted his feet and walked towards the direction of the Pill Emperor Hall that was split into two. Nobody knew what he was thinking in his heart at this moment. Between a single thought. Before my father died, he told me these 4 words. Only now did I truly comprehend the meaning behind it. What does it mean by, between a single thought? The Pill Emperor murmured, his back view filled with the vicissitudes of time. With a single thought, the reputation of the Pill Emperor Hall was destroyed. From the height of glory to the point of utter destruction, it actually happened in the span of a single thought. Luo He's body trembled violently. That voice had moved her so intensely. Wasn't all of this caused by a single thought of hers? Qingcheng. At this moment, Luo He thought of her outstanding disciple, Mo Qingcheng. Yet, she had single-handedly sent her disciple to her grave. The crowd from the star-seizing manor slowly departed. Their brows were all tightly furrowed. Up ahead, a middle-aged man clad in robes made of constellations spoke, "What do you think of the matter today? The Pill Emperor Hall seems to have suffered a great loss this time. I suspect that Qin Wentian was rescued by someone else." Another person replied, his words causing the heart of the person who asked the question to shudder. He then murmured, being able to rescue someone from the clutches of the Pill Emperor, heavily injuring 2 celestial phenomenon ascendants and even retreating safely. What level of strength does he have? He should be able to kill many experts from the Pill Emperor Hall, right? Why didn't he do so? The person who spoke earlier frowned as he shook his head. He had no way to explain this. If there really was such a character, why didn't he act against those from the Pill Emperor Hall? They couldn't understand. Maybe, Qin Wentian had already fallen. No matter what, the hatred between us and Qin Wentian isn't too great. In the future, if he's still alive, he would definitely have reinforcements that are strong enough to contend against the Pill Emperor Hall. At that time, we shouldn't antagonize him anymore. That person slowly spoke, as the others nodded their heads. Indeed, if Qin Wentian was still alive, it would be best not to antagonize him. Not only for the star-seizing manor, all the transcendent powers here had the same thought. If Qin Wentian died, so be it. But if he was still alive, the news of what happened in the Pill Emperor Hall swiftly spread throughout the entire Moon continent, and even to the entire 9 prefectures of Grand Xia. A month later, Qin Wentian's deeds in the Pill Emperor Hall caused a sensation in Grand Xia. In fact, it was even turned into a children's song, sung by countless people. At the bottom of the cliff, the demon's sword howled. Blood fed the demon's sword, dragging it for 100,000 miles, ascending the Pill Emperor Hall alone. Unwillingness to part with love, unquenchable hatred. Transforming into an ancient demon, a great rock with a wingspan of 3,000 meters, slashing apart the Pill Emperor Hall with his sword. The birth of dried bones, the appearance of a Pill Emperor, life and death severed by the heavens. Who was this young man? The top ranker of the heavenly fate rankings, Qin Wentian. Chapter 431. The legends of Qin Wentian circulated around Grand Xia, yet Qin Wentian himself had vanished without a trace. There was a rumor saying that when he was in the Pill Emperor Hall, a fairy-like maiden appeared and rescued him. As for the veracity of this rumor, no one could verify it. Qin Wentian's life or death was unknown. Mo Qingcheng's life or death was unknown. There were some who said that both of them had already died, while there were others who said that Qin Wentian was still alive, waiting for a day when he would step into the Pill Emperor Hall to avenge Mo Qingcheng. Time slowly flowed by. Today, a piece of news caused quite a commotion in the Demon Continent. In the wilderness outside the Demon Continent, there were people who saw a fairy-like silhouette. Her entire body was filled with fatigue, yet she was carrying the gigantic silhouette of a great rock on her back as she soared through the air with great difficulty. Occasionally, that fairy-like silhouette would even cough out a mouthful of fresh blood. When this news circulated around the demon continent, the hearts of many trembled. A fairy-like maiden, a gigantic rock. Could it be that the rumor regarding the Pill Emperor Hall was true? There were even people who went to the outskirts of the demon continent to investigate, yet how could they find the silhouette of that fairy-like maiden and the great rock? In the blink of an eye, another month passed. A total of 3 months had already passed since Qin Wentian's heaven-shaking actions in the Pill Emperor Hall. The forested mountain range near the demon continent was boundless and boundless. Many adventurers came here, but they didn't dare to venture too deep in. There were simply too many dangers hidden within. And today, in the depths of the mountain range, on top of an ancient mountain peak, a gigantic silhouette could be seen lying there. The eyes of this gigantic silhouette gleamed with sharpness and coldness, as it stared ahead, exuding a sense of sorrow. If one got nearer, they would discover to their shock that this gigantic silhouette was actually the silhouette of a great rock. This great rock was none other than Qin Wentian in his human form. Back then in the battle, his vitality was greatly damaged. Despite transforming into a great rock, his life force was incomparably vigorous, yet he still narrowly lost his life. Luckily, the power of his bloodline was too tyrannical, allowing him to slowly recover. 3 months later, he finally woke up. Not only that, the injuries in his body were gradually healing. Although he was alive, his heart was as cold as ice. Qingcheng, was she no longer in this world? Every time he thought of this, his heart would ache even more. His gaze was like a sharp blade, wanting nothing more than to slaughter his way into the Pill Emperor Hall once more. However, why did Qingcheng's pellet also disappear? That day after he fainted, Qin Wentian had no idea what happened next. He thought that he would die, but when he woke up, he discovered that he was lying on the back of a fairy-like figure. Qing'er had been carrying him on her back all this time. In the distance, a gust of wind blew past as a lithe silhouette flickered and appeared in front of the great rock. In her hands, there were some medicinal herbs which she placed in front of Qin Wentian's mouth. Qin Wentian looked at Qing'er and opened his mouth. Then, Qing'er fed the herb into his mouth. After that, she walked to Qin Wentian's abdomen and prepared to carry him on her back. Qing'er. At this moment, a voice drifted out from the great rock's mouth, causing Qing'er's countenance to falter. After which, she slowly walked to the side of Qin Wentian's head and quietly stood there. She was still the same as before, she didn't like to talk. Qin Wentian spoke in a low voice, "There's no need to carry me on your back. I will fully recover after a few more days. It's just that after I passed out that day, what happened?" Qingcheng, Qing'er turned and stared at Qin Wentian. After which, she shook her head and replied, "I don't know how she is now." She truly didn't know. She only knew that an extremely powerful expert appeared and told her not to tell Qin Wentian about this. She believed that this person was doing this for Qin Wentian's sake. As for Mo Qingcheng, she also had no idea how she was doing at the bottom of the cliff. Qin Wentian fell silent. He turned his eyes and stared into the distance. Qing'er could feel the sorrow in Qin Wentian's heart. She was speechless, and the two of them fell silent. After a long time, Qing'er cast another glance at Qin Wentian. Lowering her head, she softly spoke, "Maybe, she is still alive." Qin Wentian's countenance stiffened. He turned his gaze onto Qing'er once more, but he didn't say anything. His countenance gradually dimmed. Maybe, Qing'er was consoling him. "Qing'er, thank you." Qin Wentian spoke in a low voice, causing Qing'er's body to tremble. After which, she slowly sat down on the ground, accompanying Qin Wentian just like that. Before this, she was always mysterious and unfathomable. Unless there was something important, she wouldn't show herself. But this time around, she didn't leave and chose to hide in the shadows. Instead, she sat beside Qin Wentian. She could feel the sorrow in Qin Wentian's heart. Everything that Qin Wentian had done in the Pill Emperor Hall, she had personally witnessed it. It was as though she was truly exhausted. After sitting there for a long time, as night gradually descended, Qing'er closed her eyes and quietly fell asleep. Her body leaned against Qin Wentian's gigantic head, her breathing was even and rhythmic. Her beauty was dazzling to the extreme. Qin Wentian sighed in his heart. Despite the sorrow in his heart, he was still touched. He naturally knew that Qing'er was injured, and her injuries weren't light either. Yet, she still carried him on her back, all the way from the Moon Continent to the Demon Continent. Humans weren't plants or trees. How could Qin Wentian not feel gratitude in his heart? The early morning sunlight cascaded down on the Demon Continent, causing the forest to be filled with vitality. Today, Qin Wentian stood up and slowly walked forward. Qing'er followed beside him. A few days later, Qin Wentian's speed gradually increased. And after a few more days, the great rock could already spread its wings and soared into the skies. Qing'er sat on his back, gazing at the scenery in the distance. Dusk, the glow of the setting sun blanketed the skies, illuminating the Demon Continent. In this part of the Demon Continent, there were a few experts strolling about. They were adventurers who came here to hunt demonic beasts. At this moment, one of them inclined his head and stared at the red glow of the setting sun. Instantly, his gaze froze, as though he had just witnessed an inconceivable scene. At the peak of an ancient mountain, there was a gigantic boulder. On top of the boulder, a great rock could be seen, gazing at the skies. The rock was like something straight out of a painting, so beautiful that it caused one to be breathless. Not only that, beside the great rock, there was a peerlessly beautiful silhouette. It was none other than Qing'er, who had removed her veil, revealing her true features. An otherworldly beauty, as well as a tyrannical ancient great rock. The visual impact of such a scene was too intense. "What's wrong?" the others asked in a low voice. Following the gaze of that person, they too stared at the peak of the mountain. Their gazes instantly froze, as they were all captivated by the scene before them. At this moment, that fairy-like silhouette slowly walked up to the back of the great rock and sat down. The great rock unfurled its 3,000-meter-long wings and abruptly flapped, causing a raging wind to kick up. The silhouette of the great rock soared up into the clouds, as though it wanted to soar into the sunset. The great rock soared into the clouds, whistling through the air with terrifying speed. The raging wind buffeted Qing'er's body, yet she merely sat there quietly, gazing at the scenery in the skies. How beautiful! Qing'er stretched out her hands, wanting to grab a strand of red light. However, she discovered that it was merely an illusion, she couldn't grab it at all. "You've cultivated a secret art, but can't you transform into a human?" Qing'er mumbled, her voice directly transmitted into Qin Wentian's ears. "The demonic divinity sacrificial transformation allows me to communicate with the demonic divinities of the 8 directions, bestowing me with such power. It's irreversible." Qin Wentian soared through the air as he spoke. In his heart, it was unknown what he was thinking. Although he was a demon, his strength would soar by leaps and bounds. But since he was a human, how could he be willing to remain a demon forever? "There will always be a way." Qing'er's voice was crisp and melodious, as though she was in deep contemplation. "So what if I'm a demon? Since I'm a great rock in the clouds, I'm the king of the skies. As a demon, I also want to be the sovereign of the skies." Qin Wentian's voice was filled with arrogance. The wings of the great rock flapped even more ferociously as he soared through the clouds like a bolt of lightning. After a moment of silence, Qing'er continued, "But, I still want you to be a human." Qin Wentian's gaze flickered as he fell into silence once more. A human and a demon continued advancing, as fast as lightning. Finally, a demon city appeared in their vision. Looking down from the clouds, one could see the entirety of the demon city with a single glance. In the air above the celestial lake palace, a raging wind abruptly gusted as a terrifying great rock descended from the skies. This caused the countenances of those from the celestial lake palace to drastically change. When they sensed the tyrannical aura of the great rock, they all exclaimed in shock. "That's Princess Ching'er." At this moment, their gazes abruptly landed on Ching'er, who was riding on the back of the great rock. Only then did their nervousness recede, as their hearts pounded wildly. Princess Ching'er had actually returned riding on such a powerful great rock. Numerous silhouettes flickered as the great rock soared through the air, causing a raging wind to kick up. The silhouette of the great rock descended upon the vast public square, its gigantic eyes sweeping through the surroundings, causing the hearts of the spectators to involuntarily tremble. At this moment, a few silhouettes appeared in the air. The person in the lead was an exceedingly beautiful maiden. Just by standing there, she exuded an aura of majesty. At this moment, her gaze landed on the great rock, as a gentle light flickered in her eyes. After which, her silhouette flickered as she appeared beside the great rock. Looking at Qin Wentian, she stated, "Child, it's been hard on you." Qin Wentian's countenance flickered, as a look of bewilderment flashed in his eyes. However, the beautiful maiden then replied, "I'm Qingmei. Fairy Qingmei." A brilliant light flickered in Qin Wentian's eyes as he greeted, "I pay my respects to Senior." Fairy Qingmei stretched out her hands, gently stroking Qin Wentian's head. Sighing, she turned her gaze to Ching'er. "Ching'er, are you all right?" Ching'er lightly shook her head, not saying anything. Yet, the hearts of those from the celestial lake palace trembled. Fairy Qingmei had actually appeared. Why was she so gentle towards the great rock? Who was this great rock exactly? The location of the celestial lake palace was too remote. They were situated in the middle of a mountain range, and rarely interacted with the outside world. Hence, the news they knew was much more limited. Other than Fairy Qingmei and a few others, the others didn't know what happened in the Pill Emperor Hall. Everything that happened here is forbidden to be leaked out. Fairy Qingmei's gaze swept over the crowd as she commanded. Yes, Fairy Qingmei. It was rare for the crowd to see Fairy Qingmei in person. All of them respectfully replied, not daring to defy her command. "Let's go," Fairy Qingmei spoke to Qin Wentian and Ching'er, before turning and departing the area. Chapter 432. Fairy Qingmei brought Qin Wentian and Ching'er to a garden. Right now, Qin Wentian was in the form of a great rock. His body was simply too gigantic, there was no way he could enter any of the buildings. This should be the demonic divinity sacrificial transformation art, right? Fairy Qingmei, who was walking in front, halted her steps. She turned and stared at the silhouette of the great rock. The great rock nodded his head. "I obtained an innate technique from the vermilion bird formation of Grand Xia, the demonic divinity sacrificial transformation art. This art allows one to borrow the power of the demonic divinities in the 8 directions, transforming into an ancient demon. Right now, my physique, bloodline, and strength are all perfect. The only thing I can't reverse is this. I've heard of this secret art before, it's indeed too tyrannical. Who would have thought that you would barge into the Pill Emperor Hall alone, transforming into an ancient demon?" Fairy Qingmei sighed. The strength of the ancient kingdom of Grand Xia back then was comparable to all the transcendent powers of the 9 prefectures added together. That's because existences that stood at the very peak were already able to look down on the masses. Since they said this art can't be reversed, then it is. My strength is limited, there's nothing I can do. Ching'er furrowed her brows when she heard Fairy Qingmei's words. Qin Wentian's countenance didn't change as he calmly replied, "So what if I'm a supreme ancient demon?" Fairy Qingmei inclined her head and stared at the air, as though she was lost in her memories. She mumbled in a low voice, "You and the Azure Emperor back then are really similar. Back then, he didn't have a strong backing, yet he had an arrogant personality and didn't like to be controlled by others. He would soar as high as the heavens are, nobody could control him. Hence, he was envied by many and offended many. Although he knew that he was alone, he still established the Azure Emperor Palace, wanting to contend against the other transcendent powers. Sadly, as a heaven's chosen, he still couldn't escape death in the end. Although you and the Azure Emperor had different experiences, both of you are so outstanding and lofty. I don't wish for you to follow in his footsteps. Fairy Qingmei slowly spoke. The death of the Azure Emperor was her greatest pain. Qin Wentian was speechless. He had long known that Fairy Qingmei and the Azure Emperor were deeply in love with each other. If not, after 3,000 years, how many grudges would have been wiped away, yet she would still be unable to forget the Azure Emperor. Although my strength is extraordinary, I'm very clear that at my current level, if I want to continue improving, I can no longer rely on absorbing external energy to break through. The celestial phenomenon realm, I've already reached a bottleneck and it's hard for me to advance any further. I can only place my hopes on my descendants, and you are the successor chosen by the Azure Emperor. Since he has chosen you, I don't wish for you to transform into a demon forever. After all, I hope that in the future of Grand Xia, the Azure Emperor Palace would be able to stand proudly once again. Maybe, this is my selfish motive. Fairy Qingmei mumbled to herself as she turned and walked away. Qing's eyes flickered. She looked at Qin Wentian and said in a low voice, "I'll go and have a look." After speaking, she also stepped out, following after Fairy Qingmei. Qin Wentian inclined his head, staring at the skies. His huge eyes flickered with a sense of bewilderment, yet the will of vengeance was still burning within him. Bzzz. A raging wind gusted as his silhouette soared up into the skies. The great rock spread its wings and instantly vanished without a trace as he soared into the skies. Fairy Qingmei and Qing halted their steps. They inclined their heads and stared at the great rock soaring up into the skies, sighing in their hearts. This young man's talent is extremely high, and his will is extremely terrifying. Both of them have already surpassed the Azure Emperor of that year. As a person, he should be an outstanding hero. As a demon, he should be the sovereign of demons. Fairy Qingmei sighed in a low voice. Sadly, I, Qingmei, have lived for many years. I wanted to help him, yet I discovered that I'm powerless to do so. I'll try. Qing spoke, her words causing Fairy Qingmei's eyes to flicker. She turned her gaze onto Qing as a sharp glint of light flickered in her eyes. You want to look for them? Qing didn't look at Fairy Qingmei, nor did she reply. Do you know the reason why I couldn't leave? It's precisely because of this. Now that you have taken the initiative to look for them, how could they possibly agree to it? They will. Qing's words were extremely few. She only spoke two simple words, as though her words were akin to gold. Whatever she said, it was as though she would definitely be able to accomplish it. No, I don't agree. Fairy Qingmei decisively rejected. Even if they have a way, they will definitely take you away from my side. I will never allow it. They won't. Qing shook her head lightly as she stared at the skies. Over there, a great rock could be seen soaring through the skies. I still want to see him rule over Grand Xia. Qing's voice was cold, yet there was a hint of determination within. Fairy Qingmei stared at this disciple of hers as her heart trembled violently. She understood Qing too well. She rarely spoke, but every word she said was extremely precious. Once she decided on something, nobody would be able to change it, not even her master. However, she also knew what sort of existence Qing was. The sealing energy in her body caused even her to feel suffocated. As for back then when she asked Qing to protect Qin Wentian, it was actually because of her own selfish motives. Just like what she said to Qin Wentian earlier, she hoped that the Azure Emperor Palace would be able to rise up once again in Grand Xia. 3,000 years of faith and perseverance. To Fairy Qingmei, the Azure Emperor was above everything else. Naturally, this included Qin Wentian, Qing and even herself. If it wasn't for the fact that she viewed the Azure Emperor as more important than her own life, how would she have persevered for 3,000 years, waiting for the arrival of that day? However, when the secrets of Qing were finally revealed, her clansmen found this place. Yet, she couldn't bear to see Ching leave. "Master, wait for me." Ching spoke in a low voice. After which, her silhouette flickered as she vanished from her original location. Fairy Qingmei's gaze froze as she stared in the direction where Ching had left. An indescribable feeling filled her heart. A few hundred miles away from the Sky Demon City, there was a misty land that seemed to be an independent existence. Half a year ago, this place was the same as the other places, a corner of the demonic beast forest. This misty land was most probably formed from that time. Once, humans or demonic beasts would enter the misty land only to discover that there was nothing inside. Yet, they would still get lost within, and after a long period of time, they would be able to find their way out again. As time passed, there were no signs of humans here, and even demonic beasts would avoid this place. However, at this moment, a flawlessly beautiful silhouette descended from the skies, landing outside of the misty land. This silhouette was none other than Ching. She simply stood outside of the misty land, with no fluctuations in her eyes. An instant later, 2 rows of silhouettes appeared. These 2 rows of silhouettes appeared in 2 rows, and all of them were clad in white. They were all extremely beautiful women. They walked towards Ching and knelt on one knee as they respectfully greeted, "We pay our respects to Princess." "I'm not." Ching's expression didn't change at all, and she coldly spat out a few words. "Princess, please enter." The 2 rows of silhouettes left a path in the middle, directly facing Ching's position. Ching didn't reply, she continued standing there. Those silhouettes didn't get up either, and continued to kneel there. The silence was so terrifying that it was terrifying. From afar, 2 beams of sharp light shot over. It was actually a pair of eyes, belonging to a powerful demonic beast, the flame rhinoceros. It stared at the situation here, its heart trembling with shock. But at this moment, one of the white-robed silhouettes abruptly shifted her gaze over. Her silhouette flickered as she vanished from sight. An instant later, a howl of agony rang out. The flame rhinoceros that had a cultivation base at the pinnacle of Yuanfu was instantly annihilated. As for the white-robed silhouette, she once again knelt at her original position. There wasn't even a speck of dust on her body. It was as though she had never left her original position, and had always been kneeling there. Sha, 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 the sound of footsteps rang out as a few silhouettes walked out from the misty land. One was an old man, while the other 2 were young men. "We pay our respects to Princess." The old man bowed to Ching, and the 2 young men also knelt on one knee, with expressions of respect on their faces. If these 2 young men were in the Grand Xia Empire, they would definitely be able to cause a huge commotion. But at this moment, they didn't have any resentment in their hearts as they knelt there. "Princess, you've already broken the seal, but you've already injured yourself." The old man glanced at Ching as he spoke. "I want a cultivation art, or perhaps a secret art." Ching stared at the old man in front of her, ignoring his question. She replied in a cold voice, "The demonic divinity sacrificial transformation is able to borrow the power of the demonic divinities in the 8 directions to transform into an ancient demon, causing one's strength to explosively increase. One's physique, bloodline, and strength would be perfect, but it's irreversible. I want to break the seal." The old man furrowed his brows, as a look of contemplation appeared on his face. After which, he added in a low voice, "Princess, you must remember this, you must never break the seal again. If not, the damage to your body would be too great." As for what Princess said, this secret art is capable of changing the heavens and earth, it's definitely extremely powerful. It's extremely difficult to break it. I must. Ching's voice grew even colder, causing the old man to furrow his brows. He contemplated for a moment before he spoke again. "From what I know, there's only one way to break this art. This art is a supreme innate technique that allows one to cultivate another true body, creating an exact replica of himself. According to what Princess has said, this person must have transformed from a human into a demon. If he cultivates this art, he would definitely be able to cultivate his true self. As for the ancient demon he transformed into, he would continue to exist in this world as an ancient demon, continuing his cultivation. If one can truly obtain it, it would be considered as a pioneer. However, Princess has already heard of the might of this art. You should know how precious it is. Even for my clan, it's extremely difficult to obtain it. If we want to obtain it, we would have to go through an earth-shattering battle. The old man slowly spoke. I want this art. Qing interjected, causing the old man to stare at her, speechless in his heart. This princess, who had been away from home for a long time, probably didn't know how precious this art was. She only used a few words to reply to him. She wanted this art. But if he wanted this art, how would he be able to obtain it? At this moment, he was thinking, who did Princess Qing want this art for? Wasn't this person's luck too heaven-defying? I need to use the teleportation array to report this matter to my clan leader. Also, I'm afraid that Princess will have to follow me in first. Princess will have to discuss this with my clan leader personally. The old man bowed slightly, lowering his head as he spoke no more. Fine. Qing lifted her foot and walked forward. She only spoke a single word, yet there was no hesitation in her words. This caused the old man to start. He inclined his head and stared at Qing as she neared. He couldn't help but be speechless as he opened a path for her. Go and investigate this matter. Who is the princess seeking this art for? The old man transmitted his voice to a white-robed maiden. After Qing stepped into the mist, he waved his hand and the white-robed maiden's silhouette flickered as she left the area. Chapter 433. Outside of the Demon Mountain City, the desolate forests and mountain ranges were boundlessly vast. Danger lurked everywhere, and powerful demonic beasts could appear at any moment. Even within the Demon Mountain City, it was a place where both experts and demonic beasts lived together. After demonic beasts stepped into the Heavenly Dipper realm, they would be able to transform into humans. There were demons that were willing to roam the world of mortals, but there were also demons that preferred to live in the world of demons. Qin Wendian had used the demonic divinity sacrificial transformation, using his own body as a sacrifice to the demonic divinity sacrificial transformation, allowing him to transform into a human. At this moment, he was also in the world of demons, within the vast forests. On top of a gigantic boulder, the great rock stood there, its eyes gleaming with sharpness as it stared at a group of powerful demonic beasts. Scram! The great rock stared at the great earthen demon bear in the lead. In its eyes, an unparalleled majesty could be seen, as though it was the king of all living things. This earthen demonic bear was a bear king, a domineering demonic beast that ruled over an area of a few thousand miles. Seeing a rock appearing in its territory, its pitch-black eyes were filled with a tyrannical coldness, as if it was thirsty for blood. However, the body of this great rock was gigantic, and its eyes gleamed with sharpness. It resembled an ancient cloud rock, the king of all demons in the 9 heavens. But upon seeing the disdainful look in the eyes of the great rock, the earthen demon bear let out a roar. Instantly, the earth trembled as the surrounding demonic beasts all rushed towards the great rock. Bzzz. A raging wind gusted as a terrifying demonic chi gushed forth. The great rock spread its wings and instantly, the surrounding demonic beasts were all sent flying. The eyes of the earthen demon bear narrowed. Upon sensing the might of the great rock, it hurriedly retreated, only to see the great rock's silhouette flickering as it vanished from sight. The rock flash technique was now used by a real rock. How terrifying was it? In an instant, the sharp claws directly tore through the flesh on the back of the demonic bear and pierced into its body, directly lifting that incomparably huge body up. With a roar, the great rock soared up into the skies as it abruptly flung itself outwards. Bang! With a loud bang, the huge body of the demonic bear slammed into a small mountain in the distance, causing it to crack. The great rock let out a shrill cry as it flew forward at a low altitude. The forest below trembled as the demonic beasts all prostrated themselves. They raised their heads and stared at the terrifying silhouette in the air, as though they were looking up to their king. Up in the sky, Qin Wendian looked down from above. Wherever his gaze swept across, no demon dared to look directly at him. Buzz! The raging winds howled, the silhouette of the great rock landed on the peak of a gigantic ancient mountain. His eyes pierced through everything, staring down at the demonic beasts below as he coldly spoke, "In this 10,000 miles radius, I am the king. All demonic beasts, scram out of my territory or come here to pay your respects. Now, go and issue my command." The voice rolled off into the distance with the wind, causing all the demonic beasts in the area to crawl even deeper into the ground. The law of the jungle that demonic beasts abided by was even more direct: the strongest was king. Now that the Cloud Rock was going to be the king of the 10,000 miles of demon territory, all the demons had to come here to pay their respects. Go! The great rock howled in rage when he saw that none of the demonic beasts dared to get up. In an instant, the demonic beasts trembled as the entire forest trembled. All the demonic beasts in this area left to issue the command. The great rock stared at the demonic beasts, its eyes as sharp as ever. Since it was a demonic beast, it had to be the king of all demonic beasts in this territory. If it couldn't live as a human in this lifetime, it would trample the entire moon continent and flatten the Pill Emperor Hall. In a radius of 10,000 miles, the demonic beasts all rushed over. Very soon, the demonic beasts all knew that a great rock had appeared in this territory, and had the ability to look down on all demonic beasts with disdain. Very swiftly, many demonic beasts came over to pay their respects. When they saw the great rock standing at the peak of the mountain, all of them could feel how powerful it was. All of them prostrated themselves on the ground, paying their respects to the demon king. The entire region was in an uproar. All the powerful demonic beasts that had once been kings of their respective territories had all gathered here. For a period of time, a grand gathering of demonic beasts had appeared. Such a scene involuntarily caused Qin Wendian to recall the scene back then in the dark forest outside of Chu. At that time, an ancient demon statue appeared in the dark forest, and all the demonic beasts went there to pay their respects. Mo Qingqing braved great danger to find him, informing him of what happened in Chu. Now, everything was still vivid in his mind. However, the scene now was even more majestic compared to back then. The demonic beasts were even stronger, and even more numerous. Despite so many demonic beasts, the surroundings of the mountain peak were extremely quiet. All the demonic beasts submitted, and none of them dared to move recklessly. This was all because the great rock hadn't spoken yet. Qin Wendian swept his gaze over the demonic beasts in the surroundings. The demonic beasts here were incomparably strict, and there were several powerful demonic beasts that floated in the air with their heads lowered. And further down, there were even more demonic beasts that floated in the air. The lower the demonic beasts went, the weaker they became. Some of the demonic beasts closest to the mountain peak were extremely powerful. Their eyes gleamed with sharpness as they stared at the great rock. The great rock glanced over at them, his icy gaze sweeping over them, causing the arrogant demonic beasts to lower their heads, not daring to look directly at him. Gradually, none of the demonic beasts dared to look directly into the eyes of the great rock. All of them submitted, and the atmosphere was incomparably quiet. I wish to unify the 10,000 miles of the demon region. If you all are unwilling, you can leave. But if you are willing, you can serve me as your king. The great rock's voice boomed out, sweeping across the entire region. Momentarily, all the demonic beasts lowered their heads, expressing their willingness to submit. The demonic beasts that came here today all had the same thought. They hoped that there would be a powerful demon king that would be willing to lead them. Those who were unwilling had long since left. Before this, who was the lord of this 10,000-mile region? The great rock coldly spoke. Momentarily, the demonic beasts closest to him all stepped forward. All of them were extremely powerful, and even the weakest among them had an aura at the 5th level of Heavenly Dipper. Since he was the lord of a demon region, he naturally had to have the strength to intimidate the other demonic beasts. Fine, the 9 of you shall be the first batch of demonic beast commanders under me. You will be in charge of helping me govern the demons. Since I want to unify this region, I need absolute order. Can the 9 of you accomplish this? The great rock's voice was filled with a majestic might. The 9 demons bowed their heads, and one of them similarly spoke in human language, "King, we will definitely be able to accomplish your orders. It's just that this 10,000-mile region is very close to the Demon Mountain City. Hence, we need a demon king to govern this region. As for the other regions further away, there are also powerful demonic beasts that frequently invade our territories. What should we do? Out of the 9 of you, 8 will be in charge of the various demonic beasts. The last will be in charge of familiarizing yourself with this region and help me make plans. Also, inform me of the current situation in this region." The great rock stood on the mountain peak as he continued speaking. Every time he spoke, his voice was filled with a majestic might. Especially those eyes of his, they were filled with a sense of ferocity, as though he was the true sovereign of the skies, capable of causing all the demonic beasts to involuntarily submit. Precisely because they could sense the majesty and strength of the great rock, the demonic beasts were willing to listen to his commands. If not, demonic beasts were all extremely violent and violent creatures. A massive reorganization of the demonic beasts began in the demon realm. For this reorganization, Qin Wendian used the strict requirements of the human sex to govern the demons. If he wanted the demonic beasts to grow stronger, he had to first have the strength to unify them. 7 days later, the demonic king of the Great Rock welcomed its first storm. 10,000 miles away in the demon region, there was also another demonic king. This demonic king was an extremely powerful scarlet-winged earth dragon, a descendant of one of the 8 demonic dragons. Its strength was incomparably terrifying, and it had scarlet-colored wings that allowed it to descend into the heavens and descend into the earth. This demonic beast was extremely tyrannical, cruel, greedy, and lustful. It was only because the Great Rock's territory was close to the demon continent that it didn't rule over it. But now, there were actually other demonic beasts that dared to rule over this region. Hence, the Great Rock sent out demonic beasts to launch an invasion. At the border between the 2 regions, a storm of blood arose. Several terrifying demonic beasts led the other demonic beasts to invade and kill. A powerful venomous fang python was exceedingly terrifying. Anyone who got bitten by its venomous fangs would die for sure. However, at this moment, in the border region, a violent gust of wind blew, and a terrifying demonic chi could be sensed from afar. The demonic beasts inclined their heads, and after which, a group of demonic beasts had expressions of excitement on their faces. Their new king had arrived. As for the other demonic beasts, their eyes narrowed. An instant later, the Great Rock descended in the airspace above this region, its cold gaze sweeping through the area below. Bzzz. A violent gust of wind gusted by as fresh blood splattered out. That powerful venom-toothed python was directly sliced into 2, causing the battle between the demonic beasts to come to an abrupt halt. Those who invade my territory shall be killed without mercy. The Great Rock floated in the air, exuding a killing intent. The might of an emperor gushed forth, causing the hearts of the invading demonic beasts to tremble. After which, a powerful demonic beast prostrated itself on the ground. I'm willing to submit. Bzzz. A violent gust of wind gusted by as a terrifying silhouette arced through the air. That prostrating demonic beast was decapitated. The Great Rock soared up into the skies once more as it coldly spoke, "Those who slaughtered my people will not submit. Kill them." As the sound of its voice faded, the demonic beasts all felt their blood boiling. How could they not submit to such a powerful demonic lord? The Great Rock's silhouette flickered, and very swiftly, it had slaughtered all the demonic beasts. After which, it soared up into the skies and coldly spoke, "Let your demon kings come forth, I shall await its challenge." As the sound of its voice faded, the Great Rock's silhouette vanished without a trace. However, the prestige of the great rock grew even stronger. In the blink of an eye, several days passed. The great rock stood at the peak of the mountain, and in the skies above, a beautiful silhouette could be seen. It was none other than Fairy Qingmei. Her gaze was fixed on the great rock below as her heart trembled. She would never have imagined that Qin Wendian would actually use the body of a great rock to command the demonic beasts. Maybe, this was his spirit, or maybe, this was his helplessness. As a demon, he should also be a king. If he wanted revenge, he would command the demonic beasts to do so. Qing hasn't returned yet, I wonder how she's doing. Fairy Qingmei sighed in her heart, feeling worried for Qing. However, at this moment, a raging wind gusted as the great rock soared up into the skies, instantly appearing before Fairy Qingmei. Senior Qingmei. The great rock called out. Fairy Qingmei nodded her head. Is there anything I can help you with? Help me investigate the whereabouts of those from the Zong clan of the Sword Reverence City and the White Deer Institute of the Moon Continent. I will contact them at any time. Qin Wendian nodded his head. Okay, leave it to me. Fairy Qingmei agreed. You have to take note as well. If there's anything you need, feel free to look for me. After speaking, she turned and departed. As for Qin Wendian, he returned to the mountain peak, waiting for the arrival of the demon kings from the other regions. Chapter 434. At the peak of the mountain, the great rock stood there, gazing at the heavens, exuding a feeling that one couldn't look up to it. Many demonic beasts would come here frequently to worship the great rock king. Staring at the great rock in the sky, all the demonic beasts could feel the loneliness of their king. He was supreme, peering down at all the demonic beasts, accepting their worship. He stared at the heavens, as though he wanted to soar into the clouds one day, breaking through the heavens and leaving this world. The great rock's wings were extremely low, crashing into the heavens and dying. If there was a great rock that could break through the heavens, how majestic would that be? Today, a raging wind gusted. From afar, a boundless demonic might gushed forth. The great rock continued to stare at the heavens, his eyes unwavering, as though he was the king of the world. In his eyes, there was only the heavens, and he no longer placed any of the ancient demons in his eyes. Roar! An enraged roar rang out. Before the mountain peak, a terrifying silhouette that wasn't any smaller than the great rock appeared. Scarlet wings, a malevolent head, sharp horns, and cold eyes. This was none other than the king of another demon region, the scarlet-winged earth dragon. He was a descendant of the demonic dragons of the 8 directions, and the blood of the demonic gods flowed through his veins. But even for him, this was the first time he saw a true great rock. So you are the king of this place. A cold voice rang out from the mouth of the scarlet-winged earth dragon. Its body was as heavy as a small mountain, and it was unknown how heavy it was. The great rock shifted its gaze over once more, landing on the scarlet-winged earth dragon. The coldness in its eyes caused even the demonic beasts to tremble. The demonic beasts that followed behind the scarlet-winged earth dragon could all feel the coldness and arrogance of the great rock king. Before it came here, did it slaughter any of the demons in my territory? Qin Wendian faintly asked. Nope. Below, a demonic beast beneath Qin Wendian replied. The scarlet-winged earth dragon roared, this king disdains it. The great rock stared at his opponent and coldly spat out, submit, or die. The scarlet-winged earth dragon let out a low-sounding roar. Abruptly, the heavens and earth trembled violently, as though the mountains were collapsing and the earth was splitting apart. The mountain peak Qin Wendian was on was also trembling violently, as though it was on the verge of collapse. A terrifying power of the earth enveloped this entire space. Astral demonic beasts were different from humans. Astral demonic beasts were innately proficient in certain domains of energy. This scarlet-winged earth dragon was born with fire-type and earth-type attributes, and was able to absorb the astral energy from constellations in the 9 heavenly layers. There was no need for them to form an innate connection with their constellations. This was an innate talent unique to them. Furthermore, the scarlet-winged earth dragon was extremely powerful, be it in terms of strength or speed. In terms of strength, it could suppress many demonic beasts of the same level. There were also many powerful astral demonic beasts that had their own innate abilities. And as their strength grew stronger, their innate abilities would also appear, allowing them to use them. The dependence of demonic beasts on their innate abilities was much stronger compared to humans. Hence, the stronger demonic beasts, such as the 8 demonic divinities and their bloodline relatives, would all be able to cultivate to a higher level. As for those demonic beasts with weaker innate abilities, they would only be able to remain at the very bottom. Unless they had an extremely great opportunity or a heaven-defying effort, as well as some luck. The eyes of the great rock stared at the scarlet-winged earth dragon. A terrifying demonic king's aura gushed forth from him. That was the aura of a monarch descending from the heavens, as though the power of his bloodline was ignited within his body. The body of the great rock seemed to be enveloped by a layer of the halo of a king. That was the power of his bloodline, surging crazily. The huge eyes of the scarlet-winged earth dragon narrowed as its countenance turned incredibly unsightly. This great rock had such a powerful bloodline, as though he was an innate monarch. Was this the power of his bloodline? The halo of the king grew even more resplendent. The aura of the great rock rose madly, actually breaking through to the next level, exuding the aura of a peak-level heavenly dipper sovereign. Spreading its wings, the great rock floated in the air, its eyes staring down at the scarlet-winged earth dragon as a supreme king's might gushed forth. This kind of pressure was the pressure a high-stage demon king exerted on a low-stage demonic beast. Absolute suppression. This aura caused the body of the scarlet-winged earth dragon to tremble violently. Not only because of the strength of the great rock, but also because of the sensitivity of demonic beasts. The scarlet-winged earth dragon could clearly sense the nobility of the great rock. This great rock was a demonic beast of a higher level than it, an innate monarch. I'll say it again. Submit or die. The great rock coldly spoke. His voice was like a bolt of thunder, directly resonating in the mind of the scarlet-winged earth dragon. Right now, the scarlet-winged earth dragon was at the same level as the great rock, yet it could clearly feel the pressure of a higher being. Staring into the eyes of the great rock, the scarlet-winged earth dragon felt as though it was looking at the sovereign of the skies. Gradually, its eyes no longer dared to look directly at the great rock as it lowered its arrogant head. All the demonic beasts below were incomparably shocked when they saw this scene. I'm willing to submit. Upon sensing the increasingly powerful king's aura, the scarlet-winged earth dragon spoke. As the sound of its voice faded, the great rock's aura dissipated. It no longer exuded the aura of a king, completely losing its temper. The hearts of all the demonic beasts pounded as they stared at the great rock in the air. The great rock was still floating there, its sharp eyes sweeping across the crowd. None of the demonic beasts dared to look directly at it. As for the demonic beasts in the great rock's territory, their hearts were all filled with agitation as their demonic blood surged. This was their king, a true king. Even before the battle even started, the great rock had already submitted to their king. How imposing was this? Since you are the demon king of a domain, and you've entered my territory without killing a single demon, I shall confer you the position of a demon general under my command. When I'm not around, you shall govern the demons on my behalf. However, you have to abide by my rules. From now onwards, the demonic beasts of the 2 regions shall be unified, killing each other shall be strictly regulated. Are you willing to accept this? The great rock's voice was cold. The scarlet-winged earth dragon nodded. Demon General obeys your command. My ambitions don't lie here. This demon region will be returned to you sooner or later. Now, go. The voice of the great rock was cold and imposing, causing the demonic beasts to be unable to comprehend it. However, they could faintly sense that the great rock demon king had an even higher ambition. His target was that patch of clouds, the sovereign of the skies. The scarlet-winged earth dragon was conferred the title of Demon General. It left this place to reorganize the demonic beasts in its territory. The silhouette of the great rock returned to the peak of the ancient mountain and stood there, staring up at the skies. The demonic beasts below all stared at this scene. They would never know the loneliness of their king. He was originally a human, but after he came to the demon world, he became a king. Time flowed by, the autumn leaves dyed the forest red and yellow. Within the forest and mountain range, leaves drifted down unceasingly, causing the place to appear extremely lonely. In the demonic beast mountain range, the current ruler of the two regions was the great rock demon king. However, their demon king still stood there like a lightning bolt, his lonely silhouette seemingly eternal. Every time night fell, one could see the astral light cascading down from the skies, cascading onto the body of the great rock demon king. The astral light was exceptionally bright, causing the lonely silhouette of the great rock demon king to become even clearer. Fairy Qingmei didn't appear again. Qing Er's whereabouts were also unknown. The only thing Qin Wendian could think of now was to grow stronger and stronger. In the outside world, with regards to Qin Wendian's disappearance, the majority of people believed that he had already died. The Pill Emperor Hall also didn't make an appearance to discuss this matter. However, the strength of his friends gradually grew stronger, and they firmly believed that Qin Wendian hadn't died yet. In the Mystic Moon sect of the Spirit Continent, a silhouette clad in black robes could be seen. That exquisite figure was perfectly outlined by the tight-fitting black robes. Bai Qing had just returned from a secret location, only to learn that Qin Wendian might have died in the hands of the Pill Emperor Hall. Upon hearing this news, not a single tear fell from her eyes. She only stood there and stared into the horizons for a total of 7 days and 7 nights, not moving a single step. Little lass Qing. Behind Bai Qing, Autumn Snow's eyes reddened as she called out to her. However, it was as though Bai Qing didn't hear her. She continued staring into the horizons. The wind gusted by, fluttering the robes of the two maidens. Up in the skies, a gust of cold wind gusted by. Bai Qing's lips trembled, and finally, a single teardrop flowed down from the corner of her eyes. Wendian Gidge, if you die, even if the devil Dao rules the world, so what? Bai Qing's heart was filled with grief. She had cultivated to such an extent, not hesitating to injure herself. Why? If you die, what's the point of burying the entire Pill Emperor Hall? Bai Qing murmured. After which, she inclined her head and stared at the skies. Her eyes were no longer beautiful, but were incomparably dark and cold, as though they came from the depths of hell. The terrifying frigid devil energy permeated the surroundings. Autumn Snow only felt a bone-piercing coldness as she hurriedly retreated, no longer able to stand by Bai Qing's side. That devilish might enveloped Bai Qing, transforming into an even more terrifying devilish intent. Her silhouette flickered as she soared up into the skies, flying towards the horizons. Qing Autumn Snow called out, only to hear a voice drifting over from behind, let her be. She has cultivated the path of the devil in her entire life, and as such, her devilish intent grew even stronger. Whether it's a blessing or a calamity, it all depends on her luck. Outside of the Demon Mountain City, in the boundless forests and mountains, in the misty area, a group of silhouettes finally appeared. The old man who entered the misty lands back then, as well as Qing and the rest, all walked out. In the misty lands, everything was calm and tranquil. However, nobody would have thought that in a place far away from here, where experts were as common as the clouds, a storm of commotion was stirred up. The great Nirvana immortal art was stolen by someone, inciting a towering flame of fury from a terrifying power. It was unknown how many experts had fallen, and the transcendent powers of Grand Xia were all annihilated in the blink of an eye. Nobody knew that the cause of this storm was actually because of a certain someone in the Grand Xia Empire that was so far away from them. Qing slowly walked forwards. Behind her, the old man halted his steps as he called out, Princess. Qing Er's footsteps paused for a moment. Don't forget what Princess promised me. This old slave will lead my clansmen away now. That old man bowed slightly. Qing lightly nodded her head. After that, she continued walking forward. Not long after, Qing's silhouette vanished from sight. Beside the old man, a white-robed maiden stood respectfully, as though waiting for orders. Is everything you've investigated true? The old man asked calmly. Yes. Since Princess wants this method, it must be because Qin Wendian escaped from the Pill Emperor Hall. However, we have no idea who saved him. The maiden replied, her words causing the old man to frown. His surname is Qin. That man named Qin Yuanfeng shouldn't be related to him, right? Chapter 435. The misty region outside the Demon Mountain City vanished in the span of a single night, leaving no traces behind. This caused the passing demonic beasts to feel extremely puzzled. However, this seemed to be an extremely minor matter. In the royal capital of Grand Xia, there was basically no one who would know of this. What happened in this remote and desolate region would cause a huge wave of commotion. At the same time, it would also change the history of Grand Xia. In the demon region, at the peak of a mountain, the great rock stood proudly in the air. This was the solitude of a king. However, today, a silhouette flickered over from afar. The demonic beasts howled, wanting to obstruct her. However, the silhouette was proficient in spatial manipulation and could perform spatial teleportation. But even so, the silhouette was intercepted by the demonic beasts. Allow her to pass. The great rock coldly spoke. Instantly, the demonic beasts all retreated, allowing the beautiful maiden who was as beautiful as a snow lotus to pass through. This caused the demonic beasts to incline their heads in bewilderment. Did their king recognize this human maiden? Qing's silhouette flickered as she arrived at the peak of the mountain, standing beside Qin Wendian. She took out a golden page as well as an interspatial ring and handed it over to Qin Wendian. At the same time, a melodious voice rang out, "Take a look and see if this is of any use." Qin Wendian received the golden page. He could sense the runic inscriptions on it. His will sank into it and instantly, the runic inscriptions flashed through his mind as an ancient and powerful cultivation art was imprinted into his mind. Qin Wendian's heart pounded violently as he thought about it. Even his gigantic body couldn't help but tremble involuntarily. Great Nirvana immortal art, using the art of nirvanic rebirth to create a body of truth that is completely identical to the original. Qin Wendian's claws that were holding onto the golden page also trembled. His eyes gleamed with a terrifying light as he slowly turned his gaze over, staring at Qing, who was beside him. Her gaze was as calm as ever, cold, as though she would always be like this. Qing, how did you get it? Qin Wendian's voice trembled slightly. Such a terrifying technique could completely mold another true self. This was too terrifying. As long as one was alive, it would be indestructible. Furthermore, the two bodies could cultivate in different directions. The reborn true body would be exactly the same as the original body, but after that, it could choose its own path and cultivate in different directions. To a stellar martial cultivator, it was equivalent to having an additional life. With two lives, one could survive, comprehend, and battle. Even if one of them died, they would still be alive. Such a cultivation art definitely wasn't something the Grand Xia Empire could possess. No wonder it was known as the Great Nirvana Immortal Art. Where did Qing come from? She disappeared without a trace these past few days. Was it actually because of this? What price did she pay to obtain it? Within the interspatial ring, there are treasures required for cultivation. I should be able to mold a true self-body. Qing didn't reply to Qin Wendian's words. She then continued, "Send me back." Qin Wendian clutched the interspatial ring tightly. His claws were so sharp that it felt as though they were about to tear his flesh apart. The Great Nirvana Immortal Art was able to mold a true self-body, but it required treasures that he had never heard of before. But just from the name alone, he could tell that these were all priceless treasures. Qin Wendian heavily nodded his head. With this Great Nirvana Immortal Art, not only would he be able to restore his true self-body, he would even be able to form an avatar of a great rock. Such a perfect thing was like a heavenly surprise. However, Qin Wendian didn't feel as excited or happy as he had imagined. There was only a heavy feeling in his heart. Although Qing'er was still cold and didn't like to speak, this feeling of hers weighed heavily on his heart. Qing'er's silhouette flickered as she sat on the back of the great rock. The great rock spread its 3,000-meter-long wings, blotting out the sun. A raging wind gusted as the great rock soared up into the skies. Demon General Scarlet Wing, I shall temporarily leave this place to you. The other 9 demon sovereigns shall assist you. As the sound of its voice faded, the great rock soared up into the clouds. Qing'er quietly sat on Qin Wendian's back. The scene was as beautiful as a painting. Qing'er, memorize this art as well. In the future, if you obtain the materials, you can use it to mold a true self-body. Qin Wendian spoke in a low voice. Qing'er nodded her head lightly. I've seen it. However, other than the 2 of us, only Master knows of this. There must be no 4th person who knows of the existence of the great Nirvana immortal art. Qing'er solemnly instructed. Qin Wendian naturally understood. Even if Qing'er didn't say it, he knew what he should do. If such an immortal art was made known to others, the commotion it would cause wouldn't just be limited to the Grand Xia Empire. After that, even if he could condense a true body, the great rock and Qin Wendian must never appear at the same time. He could let others know that he had reversed the demonic divinity sacrificial transformation art and was able to transform into a human. However, he must never let others know that he had not only reversed the demonic divinity sacrificial transformation art, he had also created another body of truth. Within the Celestial Lake Palace, the silhouette of the great rock and Qing'er descended onto the ground. Fairy Qingmei instantly appeared, staring at the great rock and Qing'er with a smile on her face. Qing'er had already told her about the secret art of reversing the demonic divinity sacrificial transformation art. Fairy Qingmei naturally felt gratified in her heart. Wendian, I've already found the location of those from the White Deer Institute and the Zong clan. Fairy Qingmei stared at the great rock as she spoke. Senior, I'll need you to help me investigate the other transcendent powers of the hidden faction. I'll mark their locations on the map. Also, I'll be rebuilding my sect, and I'll need Senior's guidance. Qin Wendian spoke to Fairy Qingmei, his words causing a brilliant light to flicker in Fairy Qingmei's eyes. It seemed like Qin Wendian had already made his preparations. He had already started planning, gathering all the powers of the hidden Azure faction. This matter still needs to be discussed at length. Safety needs to be the first priority. After all, even if all the powers of the hidden Azure faction were added together, they still wouldn't be able to match up to a transcendent power. Fairy Qingmei stated. I understand. Hence, the power I'm going to rebuild will be a brand new power, and won't have any connections with the previous ones. This is why we need to conceal ourselves from the public, and proceed in a stealthy manner. Qin Wendian nodded. Seems like you already have a plan. As for the location of the sect, you can consider the Celestial Lake Palace. It's the safest place. Fairy Qingmei suggested. Here are the 9 ultimate arts of Grand Xia. Senior, you can pass them to the leaders of the White Deer Institute and the Zong clan, allowing them to accumulate their strength and develop further. When they see the 9 ultimate arts of Grand Xia, they will naturally understand my intentions. Qin Wendian took out the divine steel and passed it to Fairy Qingmei. He had absolute trust in Fairy Qingmei. For the sake of the Azure Emperor, she would definitely do this. Fairy Qingmei stared at Qin Wendian as a smile appeared in her beautiful eyes. Being able to hand over the 9 ultimate arts of Grand Xia to your subordinates, your courage and resolution is even higher compared to the Azure Emperor back then. If this matter were to spread out, the White Deer Institute and Zong clan would both be in danger. The leaders of the White Deer Institute and Zong clan would naturally know what to do. There's no need for us to worry about them. If Senior were to consider betraying us, not only me, Senior wouldn't spare them either. Qin Wendian casually stated. Fairy Qingmei nodded her head, that was indeed the case. However, after conversing with Qin Wentian today, she could see that after experiencing so many things, Qin Wentian's personality was gradually changing. However, the stubbornness in his heart had never wavered. I need to enter closed-door seclusion. Not only that, it's hard to estimate how long I'll need. Qin Wentian stated in a low voice. The great nirvana immortal art, using the art of nirvanic rebirth to form a body of truth, wasn't something that could be achieved so easily. Only after a long period of time would one be able to form a perfect body of truth. Now that he had transformed into a great rock, the amount of time required would be even longer. I'll help you. Qing spoke in a low voice, her words causing Qin Wentian's eyes to widen as he stared at her. Upon seeing Qing's cold expression, a warm smile appeared in his eyes. Qing, you have to cultivate as well. I'll make sure everything is in order. Fairy Qingmei shook her head. Wentian, just stay here and cultivate. I'll make sure nothing in the outside world will disturb you. Qin Wentian nodded his head. Qing, let's go. Fairy Qingmei spoke to Qing Qing cast a glance at Qin Wentian before nodding her head lightly and departing together with Fairy Qingmei. Very swiftly, this area was completely sealed off. Silence filled the air, not a single sound could be heard. Qin Wentian stretched out his talons, retrieving the golden page once more. Great Nirvana immortal art. A terrifying gleam of sharpness flickered in the eyes of the great rock. His gaze was incomparably sharp as he stared at the heavens. Qing Cheng. The great rock murmured in a low voice. Within his eyes, snowflakes drifted down. Beneath the ancient tree, that empire-toppling young lady smiled sweetly, causing the heavens and earth to lose their color. Qin Wentian, who had transformed into a great rock, started his closed-door seclusion. However, the flow of time wouldn't wait for him. In Grand Xia, there were still major events happening every day. As for Qin Wentian and Mo Qingcheng, they no longer appeared in Grand Xia. This caused the spectators to sigh. Did this pair of stunning beauties vanish just like that? Yet another year passed. Many major events occurred in this year, but the one that attracted the most attention was still the rise of the younger generation. In the previous ranking battle, there were many outstanding characters that were constantly advancing, surpassing those of the previous generations. Not only that, for those who had yet to enter the Heavenly Fate rankings, there were also many characters that rose up. And the most dazzling of them all was none other than Hua Taishu. He was only 30+ years of age and had already stepped into the 4th level of Heavenly Dipper, defeating several 5th-level Heavenly Dipper sovereigns. He was like the sun in the sky, with no one in the same generation as him being able to stand shoulder to shoulder with him. Not only that, he unceasingly surpassed those of the older generation and was hailed as the #1 genius in Grand Xia in the past 100 years. In the future, there was a high chance that he would be able to step into celestial phenomenon. Other than Hua Taishu, Chen Wang from the Chen clan, Shi Padian from the Shi clan, and Ouyang Quanxing from the Ouyang aristocrat clan were all extremely powerful as well. But the most eye-catching was a transcendent power that stood aloof from worldly affairs, the unmatched realm. Leaving aside the fact that the unmatched realm had accepted many disciples from the transcendent powers, even those who weren't from the transcendent powers also had shocking achievements within the unmatched realm. Qin Zheng, Yun Mengyi, Chu Mang, Fan Lu and the others all gradually stood out. When they roamed the outside world, they would often make enemies out with those from the transcendent powers, showing no mercy at all. Hence, they were all wanted by several transcendent powers. But the most eye-catching was none other than Bai Qing from the Mystic Moon Hall. Back then during the Heavenly Fate rankings, when Bai Qing called out, Wentian Gij, it was unknown how many hearts were broken. Now, her devil arts seemed to have evolved to an even stronger level. She was akin to a devil that walked out from the depths of purgatory, akin to a death god in the darkness of the night. The Pill Emperor Hall, Chen Clan, Wang Clan, Star-Seizing Manor, and other transcendent powers had all been killed by her in the darkness. She herself had also been ambushed a few times and suffered heavy injuries. But every time, she would be lucky enough to escape, continuing her slaughter with no fear of death. This caused her to become a thorn in the eyes of many transcendent powers. And all of this, the young man who was still in closed-door seclusion in the Celestial Lake Palace had no idea. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.